My Marvel superhero girlfriend. Hey! Look who's back for more adventures. We love having you here to continue this story that keeps us all awake. Important note, all of this is pure fiction, so don't try any techniques you hear here in real life. Your neighbor might call the cops. This amazing novel and all its rights belong to the original author. We're just the ones giving it voice and drama. Are you enjoying the show? Prove it by subscribing to our YouTube channel and leaving that like that motivates us so much. And if you want VIP access to exclusive content, our Patreon is waiting with things you won't find anywhere else. Chapter 301 Escape to Other Dimensions? Buzz. The Mage Sanctuary, Kamartaj. Nian, accompanied by Pietro, even a cat and a starfish, appeared within the pristine sanctuary. None of the mages training within the sanctuary noticed this. Otherwise, they would have been terrified to question their very existence as mages. You're here, a calm female voice suddenly echoed from the corridor behind them. Master Ancient One, you predicted my arrival again. Nian smiled, turned, and waved, greeting the figure behind him with familiarity. Pietro stared at the bald woman in a black robe standing behind him, a look of horror on his face. To him, everything around him seemed to slow to a near standstill. But he hadn't noticed how the bald woman had gotten behind them. This time, I only noticed it because you came in, the Ancient One said, gazing at Nian gravely. You're the first to enter this place through non-magical means. Just a little trick. Nian spread his hands. This is no small feat, the Ancient One commented. Because Kamartaj has been under a protective barrier since ancient times, without a wizard inside to open the door, the only way to find the non-existent Kamartaj and attempt to enter its dimension is through the portal spell passed down in the sanctuary. And Nian had mimicked energy creations from other dimensions, deceiving the sanctuary's barrier. This incredible ability is comparable to that of an alien demon. He's Pietro, Wanda's brother, Nian said, pulling Pietro aside and introducing him to the Ancient One. Follow me. The Ancient One nodded, clearly understanding their purpose, and turned to walk away. Nian followed, leading Pietro. Passing through a long corridor, the Ancient One arrived at an attic room in the sanctuary. With a wave of her sleeve, she opened a portal that seemed to have been set under a magical barrier, revealing Wanda lying on a wooden bed inside. Wanda. Little Quicksilver Pietro, unable to contain his excitement any longer, transformed into a stream of silver light and rushed into the room first. The next moment, swish! A crimson wave of energy swept through the room, carrying Pietro backwards from the doorway. The Ancient One raised his hands, and a strange wind blew out, neutralizing the crimson energy and preserving the building area. Nian supported Pietro through a layer of air. He continued to peer inside. Wanda lay slumbering on the wooden bed, as if in a nightmare. The crimson energy wasn't originating from the necklace, but from her petite body. What's wrong with my sister? Pietro asked worriedly. Ask him. The Ancient One glanced at Nian. Nian didn't respond. He set Pietro to the ground and stepped into the room. Wanda's crimson energy instinctively surged in response to his intrusion. But as it approached the young woman, the destructive energy softened into a gentle breeze. The crimson energy gently caressed the young woman, without causing any harm, or even any resistance. Nian reached Wanda's bedside without incident. The girl was still dreaming, her face tinged with anxiety and pain, her rosy lips tightly pursed, a heartbreaking sight. Master, don't leave me, Wanda murmured in her sleep. I'm right here. Nian sat down beside the bed, gently caressing Wanda's face. At his words, Wanda instinctively reached up to grasp the boy's hand. The anxiety and pain on her face faded, replaced by a peaceful and tranquil expression. Nian thought back to the past. They say that when a person is about to die, they begin to reminisce. It turns out to be true. Nian looked at the sleeping Wanda, a smile curling his lips. Wanda, I found your family. No matter what happens in the future, you still have your closest family. Remember this. When I rescued you from the ruins that day, I struck it rich, getting the best mate in the world. You'll definitely grow into something great. I'll always be watching over you, no matter where I am. After all, who could possibly give up such a wonderful maid? Have a good night's sleep. Everything will be better when you wake up, Nian whispered, his fingertip touching the girl's forehead, a warm, multicolored light seeping in. And then he left the room. Pietro stared at Nian, stunned, surprised and delighted. Brother, you really managed to woo my sister. What are you talking about? Nian raised his finger and tapped it, giving Pietro a sharp slap that left him clutching his head in agony. There was no way to avoid a slap. Watch Wanda carefully. You'll be a man in the future, too. You know what will happen to anyone who bullies her. Nian patted Pietro's shoulder hard. Yes, brother-in-law. Pietro slapped his chest, vowing. Boom. Another slap landed. Pietro was left to watch over Wanda in the room. Nian, in superpowered mode, left the room and joined the Ancient One in the main hall of the sanctuary. They sat down on ordinary wooden chairs, facing each other. Now, do you know what remains in you? The Ancient One asked softly. Nian nodded, then glanced down at his body. This time, even without the Ancient One's help, he could see the black mist emanating from his body and even his soul. It's death. Nian's eyes, shimmering with rainbow colors, were clear. That's right, what remained in him was death. Rather than a strange cosmic energy, it was more like a concept of creation called death. Like the Space Stone and the Time Stone, they embodied both infinite energy and a supreme concept. The death of one of the creator gods of this universe implanted the power of this world's concept of death in Nian, so he could only face death. Even if he were more powerful than death, as long as he remained within this universe, he would inevitably die. Unless, the Ancient One said solemnly, leave this dimension and never return. Nian smiled. Master, you warned me not to get lost in the multidimensional space, and now you're suggesting I get lost there on my own. This is the best option for you, the Ancient One said seriously. By traveling to another dimension, the impact of that world's concept of death would be weakened. Perhaps, I could even cheat death. Nian thought of this as he entered his current superpowered mode. However, recalling Aunt Diana's fear and worry after accidentally returning from the Spider-Verse, I won't leave. Without hesitation, Nian responded firmly, everything I have is here. Even if I die, I won't leave. Fleeing to another dimension, never to return? This was definitely more unacceptable than death. As a time traveler, Nian has experienced so many things and has completely taken root in this world. Here, there are things more important than his life. Master Guyi was silent. Nian stared at Guyi, the colorful light in his eyes flashed, and suddenly said, Master, the evil black energy substance in your body that comes from other dimensions. Master Guyi's face was as calm as ever. Facing the first person who saw through her secret, she whispered, everyone has to choose to give up something sometimes, and I am no exception. Only children make choices. The dying Nian disagreed, I choose to take them all. Chapter 302, Suppressing All Villains on the Surface. Ahem. A violent cough echoed from the main hall of Camartage. I've never seen your future, not even a single timeline. The Ancient One sighed softly, but I never imagined your life would end so soon. I'm sorry to disappoint you. Nian's face was pale, but his eyes, shimmering with a rainbow of light, were incredibly clear, as if they could see through all the mysteries of the world. He smiled and said, Master, I have some things to do. Wanda and Pietro are in your care. Don't let them leave for now. As if sensing what the young man was about to do, the Ancient One said in a deep voice, you can leave the rest of the world to them and us. There's no need to shoulder everything yourself. After I die, even if there's a flood? Nian shook his head, weakly but firmly saying, I'm not one of those old men. While I can still move, let me do a few last things. Supreme Master, thank you for your continued care. Goodbye. Nian smiled, holding the little orange cat on his shoulder, and stood up from the chair. As soon as he stood up, the boy and the cat vanished from Camartage. The Ancient One was left alone in the main hall. She sat in a chair, dazed, muttering to herself, you mock me for being a child, not bold enough. And you laugh at me for being an old man, not decisive enough. New York. In a basement. The doors and windows were closed, and only a dozen candles burned dimly along the side walls. Several mysterious figures in black robes sat cross-legged on the floor, their backs to the candlelight, their bodies mostly obscured by the basement darkness, their faces cold and indifferent. Right now, the Master cannot descend. We are no match for the Sorcerer Supreme. We must first find a way to obtain that book, the forbidden book hidden within Camartage. Then, destroy the 3 sanctuaries and allow the Master to descend upon Earth. Perhaps we can utilize that magical genius named Wanda, or recruit her into our fold. With the Master's blessing, she might be able to fight the Supreme. That depends on the Master's will. In any case, This world will eventually fall into the dark dimension. The cult-like private meeting hadn't concluded yet. Buzz! The underground structure they were in began to shake and tremble violently, the candlelight flickering. What happened? Is this an earthquake? The dark mages were in a state of confusion. Caecilius, their leader, paled. He drew greater energy from the dark dimension, making him more aware of the imminent danger. The chill running down his spine, the trembling in his soul, was exactly the same feeling he'd felt the first time the master had set his sights on him, so powerful, yet so unreachable. How could this be possible? Hide in the mirror dimension. Caecilius's terrified words had barely finished uttering. Boom! The entire building collapsed with a resounding roar, a shockwave flattening everything. The dark mages, unable to escape into the mirror dimension, wailed incessantly, then quickly fell silent, crushed to pulp. Outside, the streets were unaffected by the tremors. Pedestrians, watching the unfinished building collapse without warning, stepped back in fear. They naturally had no idea that this localized earthquake had annihilated a group of evil mages capable of causing future global unrest. Mount Everest, tens of thousands of meters above. Nian stood in the air. The world below him revealed the curved outline of a blue planet, breathtakingly beautiful. Standing quietly in near space, his eyes shimmering like the corner of a rainbow, reflecting the entire world beneath him. He turned his gaze away from New York. Dealing with the dark mages wielding the evil energies of other dimensions was merely a side job he was doing for the Ancient One. His journey had only just begun. In super-powered mode, Nian once again used his spider sense to sweep across the globe. California, USA. Nian descended upon a fertile wilderness and pointed his finger. The earth cracked, forming a bottomless chasm. From within floated a vibrantly colored seed. The seed, about to bloom, was vibrantly colored and exuded an eerie aura. What is this? Guan Luo, accompanying Nian, exclaimed in astonishment. He sensed a tremendous energy from the seed, a vast energy like that of the stars. The voice of the AI Alice rang out on his phone. There's no such plant species in Earth's currently known biological atlas. Because it wasn't originally created on Earth. Nian calmly gazed at the vibrant seed, buried long ago in the earth. Through his iris-colored eyes, he seemed to be able to discern a planet shaped like a human head, with the outlines of a face, countless light years away. The eerie, vibrant seed and the human-headed planet were now connected, forming a single entity. Gulu. The colorful seed suddenly trembled and flew towards the starry sky, trying to escape. Nian reached out and grabbed the colorful seed. The seed was instantly immobilized. Meanwhile, on the other side of the universe, on a planet shaped like a human head. Here, lush forests, meadows, and flower fields, stood a single, magnificent palace. A female alien, insect-like with two snail-like tentacles on her head, was trimming plants by the fountain in the palace's front yard, listening to the plants' voices. Suddenly, a thunderous roar echoed from behind. The mantis girl turned around in surprise, only to see the roof of her master's palace ripped open, revealing several giant, barbed poison ivy. These giant vines, with a radius of 1 meter, were endless and growing continuously, bursting the entire palace apart. Swish! Giant poison ivy, rapidly growing, spread outward from the palace, destroying everything like a green dragon and snake. Its roots penetrated deeply, absorbing the planet's energy and nutrients to fuel its ever faster and more frantic spread. The ivy quickly formed a forest across the planet, withering native flowers and plants at a visible rate. Vast swathes of the planet were infiltrated with a highly toxic poison ivy toxin. In mere seconds, the most fertile land was overrun by poison ivy. Deep beneath the planet, a middle-aged man in pristine white cloaked in blood uttered a wow and spat out a mouthful of blood. His face was pale, and his entire body trembled with rage. For eons, he had devoured countless planets, but this was the first time he had encountered energy backfire. The god ego was filled with not only shivering anger but also deep fear. Earth. Oh? You voluntarily severed your connection with the seed. Superbody Nian shook his head in boredom and crushed the shrunken, colorful seed. Chapter 303, Who dares to come to this earth? Amazing! Guan Luo exclaimed in sincere admiration. As Staro's avatar, it had wandered the vast universe for decades, and its understanding of the current universe and external dimensions was undoubtedly among the top 3 on Earth. Coupled with its extraordinary mental awareness and energy perception, Guanluo knew exactly what the human boy had just done. In the past, I've traversed the Green Lantern core domain and reached the places where gods and demons reside, Guanluo sighed with emotion. I never expected to meet the strongest in Earth, in the remote reaches of cosmic civilization. The strongest. Nian, in his super body mode, shook his head slightly. Just now, killing a few unprepared dark wizards was something the Ancient One, as the supreme sorcerer, could easily accomplish. The Ancient One feared only the being behind those dark wizards, the overlord from the dark dimension. As the master of the dark dimension, the other party was incredibly powerful. Even the Ancient One borrowed energy from the dark dimension to enhance himself, protecting Earth from the invasion of other dimensions. The Ancient One lacked confidence in his ability to confront the Lord of the Dark Dimension, so he was hesitant and focused on maintaining stability. Naturally, Nian, in his super mode, wasn't completely confident he could stand up to the Lord of the Dark Dimension. After all, the other party wasn't on Earth. Only a true confrontation would reveal who was stronger. Nian's strength over the Ancient One was his lack of restraint. For example, just now. For who knows how long ago, a seed capable of consuming planetary energy was planted on Earth. Its true form was an unknown entity, a living planet. If it had dared to fight Nian to the death, comparing their abilities and energy, the one-sided, crushing defeat just now would obviously not have occurred. But that living planet was timid from the start. How could an immortal being like them, who had lived for countless eons, risk their lives against a being whose exact strength was unknown without thorough preparation? Everything in the universe, once powerful and old, has its guarded shoulders. The Lord of the Dark Dimension, beings on living planets, even the Supreme Sorcerer, have their own guarded shoulders. In their high positions, with infinite lifespans, they rely not on strength but on strategy and tactics to cultivate disciples and followers. Who could be like Nian, terrifyingly strong, reckless, and unreasoning? Of course. With less than 2 days left to live, Nian naturally longed for the Lord of Dimensions and the Life Planet to descend upon him and attempt to take these old men with him. I'm right here, do you dare come? A black-haired young man, accompanied by a cat, stood high above California. His pale face was calm, weak yet full of fighting spirit. Who dared to descend and fight him for their lives? Gurgling. In the basement of a collapsed building in New York. From among the black-robed corpses, crushed into pulp, black blood flowed through the rubble, coalescing into a single cold, ruthless eye. It was definitely not an eye possessed by a normal creature, like a ray of ultimate darkness from the abyss. From the ruins, this eye gazed towards the sky above California. At the same time, the colorful seed dust that Nian had just crushed also faintly emanated a faint stellar energy fluctuation. A terrifying entity from the depths of the universe gazed down upon Earth from afar. At that moment, the little orange cat perched on the boy's shoulder bristled, and even the starfish's single eye was filled with terror. Come or not. Nian's eyes, a dazzling glint of color, gazed at the ruins of New York in one end of the starry sky. A few months ago, he was just an ordinary high school student, never one to stir up trouble. However, the Lord of the Dark Dimension, controlling the dark mages and their puppets, and the energy-sucking seeds planted by the beings on the planets of life, were clearly heretics who had long been plotting against Earth. A few seconds later, the eye within the ruins of New York collapsed, transforming into a pool of fetid black blood. The stellar energy fluctuations also vanished, and the seed dust dissipated in the wind. Xiao Wang's fur finally softened, and Guanluo's heart finally settled. Only Nian's brilliant, multicolored eyes flashed with disappointment. He truly wished he could lure these old creatures down, try to bring them along as companions while there was still time. I'm disappointed you're not coming. Nian shook his head, took a step through the air, and vanished with Xiao Wang and Guanluo. In California, at an archaeological dig site. Miss Moon, we've found something. An archaeologist clearing dirt from a cave waved and called out. Coming. A white woman emerged from the tent, her work ID adorned on her towering chest. She was tying her slightly curly hair back together and skillfully clambering over the protective barrier into the cave. Joan Moon had returned to her normal human form, working as an archaeologist, but she was clearly distracted, lost in thought. Last time, she was once again possessed by the evil spirit that had possessed her. But after encountering the young man she had met in Gotham City, she managed to break free of the spirit's control and regain a moment of clarity. Or perhaps even the evil spirits wanted to rescue the human boy. Kai Moon was lost in thought when she suddenly noticed the worksite had fallen inexplicably quiet. What's this? Startled, she stood up, only to find her colleagues and staff, all still in their previous archaeological positions, standing motionless like statues. Machinery and vehicles had ceased operation, and the caverns, bustling with activity just moments before, suddenly became utterly silent. Kai Moon, as if sensing something, turned around and saw a familiar figure standing at the cave entrance, basking in the sunlight with a kitten. It's you. Kai Moon's mouth dropped open in surprise. Let it out, Zai said in a low voice. Kai Moon was about to say something when her eyes rolled back and she lost consciousness. Her body didn't fall, but instead reclined in the cavern's darkness, a veil of darkness covering her skin, her once rosy, snow-white skin pale. Her young, beautiful face had turned gray and gloomy, her dark hair cascading down her shoulders. An ominous aura swirled about her, like the spirit of the dead. Less than a second passed. Joan Moon transformed into the enchantress who had appeared aboard the Grand Air cruise ship, having single-handedly held down Supergirl and Spider-Woman. Though a clever trick, her power was still immense. The enchantress, after glancing at Nian, swiftly retreated into the darkness of the cavern, her pale figure, disheveled, vanishing. It was as if she was fleeing. What a joke. Even the overlords of other dimensions wouldn't dare descend to confront her, and how could this sorcerer from another dimension not just flee and wait for death? If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 304, Kill the Mastermind. In super mode, Zai Nian, Xiao Wang, and Guan Luo, all five eyes silently watched the disappearing charm witch. Then, the other figure almost blended into the darkness, then emerged from the void. The charm witch stared at Zai Nian in disbelief, her gaze fixed on the necklace he wore. The pendant, radiating blue light, froze in the entire space. Teleportation prohibited. Ahem. Let's talk, how about that? Zai Nian coughed and smiled. The witch's scream echoed again within the cave, this time, a scream mingled with fear and pain. A few seconds later, darkness faded like fog, and the bright sunlight from outside streamed in. The witch sat half sitting on the ground, her slender body cradled against the cave wall, her intangible black veil disheveled, giving her the appearance of having been ravaged. Now, can we talk, Miss Evil Spirit? Xinian bent down before the witch, his delicate face pale, a harmless smile on his face. 5 minutes later, Xinian left the archaeological site. Inside the cave, John Moon, now reverted to his human form, lay unconscious on the ground. The surrounding staff, resembling statues, collectively resumed their movements, rubbing the backs of their heads in confusion and looking around. Xinian had not chosen to eliminate the evil spirit. Now, the witch's evil spirit and John Moon had become one, like the Hulk and Banner coexisting. However, Zai Nian could confirm that the other party would be unable to harm anyone else. Leaving him alive might be a better option than eliminating him. Are you still following me? Zai Nian, leaving the archaeological site, suddenly turned back and looked toward a forested area. Xiao Wang looked at the area in confusion, but saw no living creature. That raven. Guan Luo said solemnly, as if he had also discovered something. Yes, a raven. In the forest behind Xinian, perched on the branches of a tree, a raven with blackened wings rested. This raven had no physical form, not even a host, so only those with high mental strength or keen energy perception could notice its presence. Hearing Xinian's words, the raven spread its wings and flew out of the forest, landing on the boy's shoulder where the cat wasn't resting. Aren't you afraid I'll kill you? Xinian spoke calmly, his eyes aglow with colorful light, revealing the raven's true nature. The raven perched on the boy's shoulder, its usually emotionless, animal eyes now taking on a humanistic hue. It folded its jet black, translucent wings, and nuzzled its tiny head against the boy's neck, seeming surprisingly affectionate. Xinian hesitated, but ultimately chose not to act. He softly said, "Go. Leave Earth as soon as possible. This is not the dimension you were born into. Although devouring souls is simply your nature, your very existence is a deadly danger to others." Xinian reached out and plucked a single inky feather from the incorporeal raven's body. As the feather fell, the raven's eyes lit up with even more shimmering light, as if suddenly recalling many things. It flapped its wings and took off. Soaring high into the sky, it turned back to give the boy a deep look before fading away. Goodbye. Nian watched the raven's tiny form disappear. He glanced down at his right hand. The normally invisible feather had transformed into a black shackle. It melted like ice, dissipating into a strange energy that dissipated in his hand. Another trick by the alien demons. Guan Luo vaguely guessed something, and his shock deepened. He realized that perhaps he had misjudged Earth before, completely wrong. So many alien demons, the most powerful beings in the universe, devouring planets and overthrowing civilizations, had been invading here through various means since who knows when. There were also Kryptonians and gods. Earth was definitely not just a life-bearing planet in a remote part of the universe. Where are we going next? Guan Luo asked curiously. He felt that even if he, as an avatar, died, to be able to share a final journey with the most powerful legend on this planet would be a lifelong boast. Even if he wandered the universe again, it would be enough to brag about for the rest of his life. Nian didn't answer. Instead, he pulled his phone from his pocket and gave the command, Alice, store all your data here. Ignore the company's business for now, and take a vacation. Yes. The AI Alice responded quickly. Although she didn't understand her master's intentions, as an AI, the most important thing was to obey orders. Alice spent a minute storing all her data from Future Chronicle Company, her home, and the remote satellite back into the modified phone chip. Nian pried open Xiao Wang's mouth and stored the phone in the devouring dimension. The AI Alice disconnected from the present world. Normally, it would be more convenient to bring along AI assistants. But Nian was about to visit a forbidden area for AI. Metropolis, port. Beneath the surface, a skull-shaped alien spaceship lay dormant, its dense network of pipes extending outward, connecting to most of the neighboring metropolis. Zzz. Metropolis energy and information poured into the skull-shaped spaceship from all directions. Everything was happening silently. Not even the residents of Metropolis. Even Cyborg, who believed he could control the entire Earth's network information, and Superman, the superhero stationed to protect Metropolis, were completely unaware of this. Inside the skull-shaped spaceship, various sophisticated instruments, far superior to those found on Earth, gleamed faintly. A vessel containing a human brain and glassware depicting city models lay scattered across the workbench. By absorbing a few more million bits, I'll eventually break through the boundaries of this universe and evolve to the realm of ultimate intelligence. The towering being in the chair muttered to himself, his voice hoarse and cold, as if synthesized electronically. Just then, a young man's voice suddenly rang out from the cabin behind the chair. You are the true mastermind behind the Great Era cruise ship incident, right? The towering being in the chair froze upon hearing this. Chapter 305, Super Nian vs. Brainiac. Beneath the Metropolis harbor, within the cabin of a skull-shaped alien spaceship, the blue mist imbued with special properties dissipated behind the black-haired youth. In front of him, the towering figure in the pilot's seat slowly stood up and turned. Super Nian's eyes flashed with a brilliant, multicolored light. The owner of the skull-shaped alien spaceship stood nearly 2 meters tall, burly and powerful, his skin all green. His bald head was crowned with several red lights, and he wore a suit of highly sophisticated metal armor. His face was expressionless, and he utterly lacked any trace of life. A robot like cyborg or vision? No. This was more like a special cyborg, possessing an incredibly powerful energy. This energy far surpassed a new elemental energy core in Iron Man's suit, and even surpassed the energy conversion field in Clark, the Superman. Super Nian scanned the other with his eyes, quickly analyzing and drawing numerous conclusions. At this moment, the colorful starfish in the glass jar suddenly opened its single eye wide, and shouted in surprise, "It's it! Do you know it?" Nian's mind moved slightly. When I was wandering in the universe, I heard about it in some civilizations. It is exactly the same as described in the legend, that's it. Guan Luo's mind was trembling. The universe is vast and boundless, and the planets with life and civilized races are like grains of sand in the desert, too numerous to count. But there are actually not many top advanced civilizations, such as the once famous Titan, Apocalypse, Krypton, etc. These top civilizations have been around for billions of years and are the absolute overlords of the local star field. It can be said that it takes hundreds of millions of civilizations to give birth to a top advanced civilization. Even the Green Lantern Corps, gods and demons will not provoke it easily. Xinian, you mean, the other party comes from one of the overlord-level advanced civilizations? It's not that simple. Guan Luo replied in horror. I heard that there is such a top advanced civilization, Comet Core Star. The scientific and technological field of this civilization was once at the forefront of the universe. Until a few decades ago, this overlord-level top civilization destroyed itself due to unknown reasons. The only survivor of Comet Core Star is named Brainiac. Some say it is an artificial man created by local scientists, others say it's a self-evolving artificial intelligence. No matter what, wherever Brainiac passes, universal civilization will be destroyed. Brainiac has a hobby, miniaturizing and collecting cities from destroyed civilizations. Look at the workbench in front of you on the right. At Guan Luo's gesture, Xinian glanced at the workbench and saw many bizarrely detailed miniature city models, protected by a specially crafted glass cover. A flash of enlightenment flashed in Xinian's eyes. No wonder I sense the presence of life and the pulsation of souls from some of these city models. Suddenly, a hoarse, indifferent voice echoed from the cabin. It's absolutely right. I am Brainiac. The alien spacecraft's owner suddenly spoke, frightening Guan Luo's mind and spirit. Xinian narrowed his eyes slightly. The other party had actually intercepted Guan Luo's mental messages. This terrifying level of telepathy was enough to confuse the Polaris boss and induce the witch to appear and take action. It was clear that this person was the mastermind behind the Great Era incident. A starfish, a genus devourer, a symbiote, and a human, Nian prince. Brainiac said hoarsely, 4 against 1. The little orange cat on the boy's shoulder bristled, its green eyes fixed on him coldly. They're just spectators. Nian shook his head, gently stroked little Emperor's bristling fur, and whispered, don't do anything, just watch. And don't stray a meter from my body. Little Emperor, as if aware he'd be a hindrance, nodded his head, embraced Guan Luo with his front paws, and hid in the collar of Nian's windbreaker. Guan Luo knew better than anyone that facing such a terrifying overlord-level giant, without Nian's protection, he would be killed in a second. What is an overlord? Only leaders who can destroy planets and overthrow civilizations at will are worthy of the title of Cosmic Overlord. Each of their names is enough to shock the universe. I kind of hope it's all 4 of us, Brainiac said with a strange smile. As soon as he finished speaking, whoosh! There was no tail flame eruption. 2 figures, one black and one white, streaked from the cabin passage at breakneck speed, their capes fluttering behind them as they charged straight at the black-haired youth who had intruded into the alien spacecraft. Xinian shifted, his movements completely invisible. With a clang, the youth grabbed 2 massive robots by the neck, one in each hand. Black and white vision. Xinian's brilliant, multicolored eyes narrowed. Wasn't the one attacking him the vision with a kryptonite brain and a vibranium body? The base color of the outer vibranium was also black, one white. However, these were clearly not the 2 visions aboard the Grand Era. After all, those 2 visions had been dispatched by the Justice League, while the black and white vision he held now, his entire vibranium body undamaged, and his cape, too, looked as new as if it had just left the factory. Had there been more than just 2 visions from the beginning? Xinian was just beginning to think of this. 2 more black and white figures, as fast as lightning, darted forward from the cabin, one on each side, low and high. Just how many vision robots did the other side have? Xinian stood still, motionless. There was no need to move, as the enemy was made of metal. Buzz! The black and white figures, so fast they became mere afterimages, abruptly stopped 3 meters away from the young man. The interior of the alien spaceship, including the ship itself, trembled slightly at this moment. The young man's black hair flew wildly, and green fluorescence swirled and rose from his body like a green tornado. With a super body Xinian as the center, magnetic force began to twist and flow. 4 vision robots, made of vibranium, simultaneously stopped in midair beside the young man, unable to move. Seeing this, Brainiac, not far away, unhesitatingly removed his technological armor with a single click. At the same time, Xinian clenched his hands, and the 4 vision robots immediately creaked, their vibranium bodies slightly warping and deforming. Vibranium, the strongest metal on Earth, is so powerful that even Superman struggles to break it with his bare hands. However, Superman's strength combined with his magnetic control makes it the ultimate nemesis of the cosmic metal. Crack! As the 4 visions' vibranium bodies begin to crack and shatter, their bodies simultaneously unravel like armor. Super Xenian's eyes widen. These 4 visions are surprisingly hollow, weapons akin to vibranium armor. From within these vision armors, 4 muscular, perfectly formed young men leap out. Their eyes are devoid of emotion. Like androids, they swing their fists forward, simultaneously striking Super Xenian. 4 hurricanes erupt from their fists, their force transforming into shockwaves that shatter the air within the cabin. How is this possible? Guan Luo's mind trembles violently. 4 Kryptonians. Chapter 306 The True Strength of Super Body Mode. Whoosh! Like a bullet, like an airplane. Under the night sky, a red cape fluttered in the night wind. A tall, muscular, and perfectly formed figure abruptly stopped above Metropolis Harbor and gazed down. What's here? With a capital S-shaped family totem bulging from his sturdy chest, Superman Clark stood high above, like a mortal god, surveying the seemingly tranquil harbor. Just now, driven by Batman Bruce Wayne's suspicions, Superman had made a special trip to the port where the Grand Air cruise ship had departed 2 days earlier to confirm the situation. It was clear that the Grand Air cruise ship and the Kryptonite Mountain had been dealt with. Metropolis Harbor had merely doubled its security personnel. Beyond that, the harbor was peaceful, with nothing unusual or out of the ordinary. Superman used his X-ray vision to scan the harbor's surface, finding nothing unusual. Oh, besides the surface, there was also. As if suddenly struck by a thought, Superman Clark gazed downward, his senses penetrating the ground, scanning the area beneath the harbor. 10 meters underground, nothing unusual. 100 meters, nothing strange either. Until, 200 meters down. What's that? Superman's pupils suddenly constricted. At that moment, the entire Metropolis Harbor shook violently. Crack. Long, vertical cracks ripped through the harbor's surface, forming a bottomless chasm. The cracks continued to spread, and containers and buildings collapsed one by one. This was just the aftermath. The aftermath of a fight. Superman was acutely aware of this. Horizontal ellipsis. At that moment, over 200 meters underground, inside a skull-shaped alien spaceship, the cabin shook violently, and even Brainiac's usually emotionless eyes flickered with a hint of surprise. Ahead, 4 muscular, human-looking young men emerged from within the Vision's armor. They used no abilities or techniques, simply unleashing their full might. After all, the Kryptonian fist itself was one of the most powerful weapons in the world. The 4 Kryptonian simultaneous punches stopped just a few centimeters from the boy's body. An invisible energy shield enveloped Xenian like an eggshell, and the Kryptonian's punch narrowly missed piercing the shield and striking him. This was enough to incredulous Brainiac. Even he wasn't confident he could simultaneously block 4 Kryptonian attacks with his shield. Roughly 2/3 of Kara's strength. Xenian's expression remained unchanged, glancing at the 4 Kryptonians surrounding him. So that's how it was. Xenian quickly realized that these 4 Kryptonians' bodies hadn't been exposed to the prolonged baptism of Earth's sun. Wake up! Xenian shouted softly, his voice laced with spiritual energy, attempting to awaken them. The 4 Kryptonians remained silent, like robots, and simultaneously swung their other fists, thundering down upon Xenian. If you don't wake up, then get out of here. Xenian's eyes darkened, and a rainbow of light shone. Bang! Xenian's own superhuman force field, superimposed with his invisibility field, blasted the incredibly strong shield outward, sending the 4 Kryptonians flying before they could strike. Boom, boom, boom. Each Kryptonian smashed through the ship's hold, their bodies plunging deep into the ground outside. Xenian cast his gaze forward at Brainiac. Dealing with the other controlled minions was pointless, killing the real one was the key. Unexpectedly, Brainiac, freshly stripped of his technological armor, also stared at him, whispering hoarsely, "Now." Xenian glanced upwards, his spider sense blazing with a powerful warning. Metropolis Harbor. Superman darted in and out like a bullet, ferrying people away from danger at breakneck speed. By the time he landed at the edge of a chasm, the entire port had shattered, seawater pouring in. We must address the source below. Clark, Superman, wore a solemn expression. He was about to fly into the underground rift when a mysterious green light suddenly shone down from the sky onto the harbor. This green light made him feel intensely unwell in every way. Green light. Superman looked up, only to be stunned again. What met his eyes was a bright green sun, as bright as daylight. No. It was an incredibly piercing, bright green beam, descending from the heavens, like a straight line of blazing lightning, like a giant lightsaber. Boom! The green energy beam instantly pierced through sky and earth, plunging deep into the underground rift in front of Superman. Superman was struck by the energy beam's aftershocks, and instantly groaned in pain as he flew backwards. The energy beam easily penetrated 200 meters underground, piercing through the center of the skull-shaped alien spaceship. Its power continued to pierce the solid Earth's crust until it disappeared tens of thousands of meters underground. At this moment, inside the cabin of the skull-shaped alien spaceship, Brainiac's face was impassive as he gazed at the ship's deck, a horrific hole piercing the sky. The young man was nowhere to be seen. Reduced to ash by this blow, it was worth something, Brainiac whispered hoarsely. This strike is enough to pierce through some small planets. This laser cannon was not only immensely powerful, but also infused with kryptonite dust, originally intended to kill Superman. From the outset, Brainiac's use of vision and the Kryptonians were merely deceptions to confuse the enemy. This planet-piercing laser cannon was the true killer. A single strike and a sure kill. It's over, Brainiac breathed a sigh of relief. In truth, the enemy's sudden discovery and presence within the ship had indeed startled him. After all, Brainiac had made no preparations for the foe. Fortunately, with his sheer strength, flaws in his plan were irrelevant. He could simply destroy them once and for all. Just as Brainiac was thinking this, a faint meow reached his ears. The cat's meow came from within the hole created by the laser cannon. This isn't right. Brainiac was stunned. Swish! 4 black and white visions, 4 Kryptonians, landed simultaneously on the edge of the hole created by the laser cannon. At the same moment, swish! 2 crimson laser beams blazed from within the hole, shooting straight up through the skull ship, following the trajectory of the laser cannon's earlier attack, piercing back through the underground rifts and into the night sky's dome. The 2 crimson lasers, like lines of sight, pierced another skull ship in outer space, transforming it into a ball of orange fire. This isn't right! Brainiac exclaimed in shock. The 4 Kryptonians immediately made a move to charge into the hole, but were quickly grasped by a vision. The black and white vision's vibranium body seemed to lose control, tightly wrapping its limbs around the Kryptonian, locking them together. With a flash of blue light, a young man's figure emerged from near Brainiac. As he appeared, he extended his right hand towards the other man. Wait? Brainiac's expression was filled with human-like surprise, but the energy shield on his body, strong enough to withstand a Kryptonian's attack, was directly shattered by the boy's forward hand. His small palm swiftly and powerfully covered his forehead. Game over, Zai said in a low voice. Chapter 307, A Battle Behind the Scenes, the final outcome. The battle aboard the alien ship took a sudden turn. Vibranium-clad vision armor locked onto each Kryptonian, who had been exposed to Earth's sun. Brainiac, the leader, was gripped by a single hand by a young man floating above the ship's deck, unable to move. Ahem. A sharp cough echoed through the alien ship. Xenian's face was itched with a lingering pallor, and a trickle of crimson blood flowed from the corner of his mouth. This was clearly not the damage from the planet-piercing Kryptonian laser cannon. After all, Xenian's appearance was unscathed, his clothes unwrinkled, and a primordial beast cub's tiny head peeked out from the collar of his windbreaker. It was unimaginable. The human boy was incredibly strong, yet he looked like someone gravely ill, nearing the end of his life. To be his enemy. Brainiac couldn't smile at all, a chill running down his spine. Bang! Brainiac swung his right fist, aiming for Xenian's face, only to be met with a steady hand from the other. The astonishing force was dissipated by the intertwining force fields before it could even explode at the tip of his fist. Is it even stronger than Superman's? Super Xenian's face remained calm, his eyes ablaze with rainbow light as he gazed at Brainiac. He couldn't help but admire him. This guy, despite possessing physical strength surpassing even that of the son of Krypton, was constantly manipulating the enemy with technology and his subordinates. Brainiac grew increasingly terrified. Before the dark-haired young man, it felt as if everything was about to be seen through, and all his methods and strength seemed feeble and powerless. His fist, gripped and unable to retract, he slammed his left fist into the opponent's barrier. Sensing Xenian's hand increasing its force, coordinated with a force field, he attempted to crush his skull. At this moment, Brainiac finally panicked. Wait? Wait? Super Xenian naturally wouldn't stop. But at the same time, Xenian sensed an invisible force erupting from the front and sweeping forward, piercing his own energy barrier like a sharp, physical steel needle. attempting to pierce his temple and enter his brain. This was telepathy, telekinesis. However, it was more than 10 times more powerful than those of Guan Luo and the White Queen. You forced me to do this. Brainiac's ruthless eyes glowed white, the red light atop his bald head lit steadily, and veins bulged from his forehead and temples. This was his ultimate and most effective attack. I possess a level 12 intelligence, the highest standard in the current universe. Brainiac regained his confidence. Yes, there was no reason for him to lose. He had indirectly destroyed even Kryptonian civilization. He was just facing a kid from Earth. No matter how strong he was, there was a limit to his strength. And intelligence and telepathy were Brainiac's greatest advantages. At that moment, the powerful telepathy transformed into tangible static currents, blasting towards Nian's head. Brainiac felt it. He was only one step away from penetrating his opponent's brain and ravaging his mind and consciousness. At that moment, Brainiac met Nian's dazzling, iridescent eyes. Snap! A distinct crackling sound echoed deep within Brainiac's brain. Brainiac was stunned for a moment, staring at the young man still floating in front of him. Then, it dawned on him that it was his own brain that was shattered. If his own telepathy was like a surging river, a backward waterfall, then the other person's was like a boundless ocean. Puff! Brainiac's brain, transformed into actual thought, was pierced through. Brain matter, resembling motor oil, splattered from the back of his head, and the white light in his eyes dimmed. Super Nian let go, and Brainiac's massive body instantly fell to the deck. Crash! Within the skull-shaped spaceship, all the equipment, including vision and the Kryptonian, ceased function. Silence fell. Super Nian shook his head gently. What the other person didn't know was that, in his current state, his physical strength was only slightly stronger than Superman's. And with his mental and spiritual power layered together, even he himself didn't realize how powerful it was. Nian looked at the soulless Kryptonians lying on the ground. It was clear they were already brain dead, like the vision armor, weapons controlled by Brainiac's mind. Now that Brainiac was dead, the Kryptonians had naturally lost their ability to move independently. Little Emperor, open your mouth, said the supersized Nian. With a thud, the numerous city models suspended on the workbench suddenly levitated and flew into the vortex of the black hole in Little Emperor's gaping maw. These alien cities shrunk by Brainiac were mostly from long-extinct civilizations, some of which still harbored local aliens. Restoring these alien cities to their original state in the outside world was unclear whether it would be a blessing or a curse. Nian planned to relocate these alien cities into Little Emperor's elemental devouring dimension, a beneficial outcome for both Earth and the alien cities. Finally, Nian sealed the entire skull-shaped spaceship into the elemental devouring dimension, storing it in its deepest depths. Having accomplished this, Nian vanished from the underground with Little Emperor. Shortly after his departure, there was a loud bang. A tall man with a red cape punched through layers of earth, reaching the underground area where the spaceship had been. He surveyed the hollowed-out area, where only countless cable ducts remained. What happened here? Superman asked, bewildered. Metropolis, a busy pedestrian street, at an intersection. A white man in a suit and tie turned his gaze away from the Metropolis port, holding onto a nearby lamppost and letting out a breath. That was a close call. Brainiac felt a surge of hope. The other party had recognized it as a smart terminal. But what they didn't know was that it could replicate itself. Before arriving on Earth, Brainiac had created several copies of himself, leaving them on other cosmic civilizations. Upon arriving on Earth, he created several more copies, using bodies of varying materials to blend into Earth society. As long as I'm alive, I'm not defeated. Despite the heavy losses, I'll soon be able to make a comeback. Brainiac had the confidence and the resources to do so. At this moment, the white man clinging to the lamppost screamed, his head in his hands, a splitting headache. He collapsed onto the road, tumbling madly, shocking passers-by. His face was purple, his breathing was labored, and his eyes were bloodshot. With his 12th level intelligence, he quickly determined he was poisoned. However, his clone had never come into contact with the enemy. Was it that time? Brainiac suddenly recalled the moment the youth grasped his first self's forehead. At that moment, he had been silently injected with a poison. This poison had no physical form. It was more like a virus, spreading through telepathy and infecting other consciousnesses. How could such a thing be possible? At that moment, Brainiac finally realized what kind of being he had just faced. Chapter 308, End of Volume 1, This era is called Heroes. Open it. A woman's cry startled seagulls and fish above the ocean. With a perfect figure, she wielded her twin swords, shattering the barrier and plummeting below. Ahem. A golden lasso swung through the air, and the silver sword of Vulcan plunged into the earth. The master of the divine weapons brought her tall figure to a steady stop. Black hair from her silver crown fluttered wildly as Wonder Woman stumbled upon the legendary, long-destroyed land of the Greek gods, Mount Olympus. Only half the mountain lay tilted and sunk in the sea. Within, a shattered and decaying mass, devoid of life, not even plant life, only rubble and debris, the surface still etched the ravages of thousands of years of conflict. Faint traces of ruined buildings could be seen on the mountainside. This place looked more like the remains of a completely fallen civilization, devoid of the sacred aura of a divine presence. Wonder Woman reclaimed the sword of Vulcan, slinging it behind her back. A flicker of hope crossed her face. Without a pause, she panted towards the crumbling mountain. Even if the Greek gods were truly gone, they might have left behind some sacred relics or ancient artifacts that might save the dying Nian. Near the foot of the crumbling, tilted mountainside, facing the crumbling stone steps slanting upward, Wonder Woman was about to use her lasso of truth to soar to the summit, but its golden light suddenly dimmed, as if suppressed by a strange local energy barrier. Returning to her birthplace, the artifact was ineffective. And besides, Wonder Woman felt a surge of pressure, barely able to stand straight. Thumb. Diana gritted her teeth, retracted the lasso of truth, and took a powerful step upward, beginning her ascent on foot. Next to the mountain, in a narrow cave crevice, a pair of cold eyes peeked at Wonder Woman as she climbed. It's her. She's actually back here. That's good. I can avenge my last battle. After decades of recuperation, I finally recovered most of my divine power. The massive, mysterious being raised its weapon, its body ablaze with crimson flames, and was about to burst from the narrow cavern. But then, who are you? The massive being suddenly realized, sensing behind it, in the narrow cavernous crevice, there was an invisible third person. Boom. A kick sent the mysterious, burly being slamming into the ground, breaking through the island and flying into the depths of the sea below. From within the cave, a young man's voice muttered, "Just recuperate for a few more decades." Oh, no, this time it might take hundreds of years to recover. The sun set. Wonder Woman climbed the tilted, collapsed mountain step by step. By the latter half, she was practically relying on the sword of the god of fire to support herself. The divine power and energy here, sealed by the barrier, were in chaos. Even the force field was distorted, and some areas were dozens of times heavier than outside. Beads of sweat dripped down the curves of her lithe muscles. Wonder Woman was suddenly stopped by a half-broken stone statue, collapsed on the steps of the sacred mountain. Only the upper half of the statue remained, its intricate carvings remarkably lifelike. What surprised Wonder Woman was that the statue's face bore an exact resemblance to hers. The only difference was the hairstyle, which reached her waist, revealing a dignified and elegant demeanor. This was a statue of Athena, one of the ancient Greek deities. A sudden realization struck Wonder Woman. According to seniority, she should have called her sister. "Excuse me, but I have reasons to be." Wonder Woman clenched her fists, stepped over the collapsed statue of Athena, and continued on her way. At the foot of the mountainside, an invisible figure stood. Watching the woman climbing higher and higher, a smile played unconsciously on the young man's lips. Nian hadn't appeared. From the moment he entered this place, he knew nothing here could save him. But if he appeared, wouldn't that be tantamount to wiping out all his hopes and efforts? So, super body Nian hesitated for a moment, ultimately choosing to stand in the shadows. "My aunt is beautiful, isn't she?" Nian said. Guan Luo responded, "I've never seen such a beauty in the universe." "Isn't that so? After all, she's my aunt." Nian smiled, sitting on the ground, as if to burn the figure before him into his eyes, into his soul. Even after death, he wouldn't forget it. Watching the figure struggling to reach the summit for him, Nian was lost in thought. For just that moment, it seemed as if the decade-long journey through time and space had been worth it. "Oh, God! Please make time pass more slowly. Oh, my aunt is a deity, so it's all right." The next morning, Nian awoke to a loud noise outside his room. He instinctively got up, but the moment he stood up, he stumbled and nearly fell to the ground. That's right. 12 hours later, all the superimposed abilities on his body had vanished, super body mode was gone. The Iron Man seemed weaker than ever. Today is the day, Zinnian muttered, seemingly aware of something. He glanced at the phone on the bedside table, but chose not to pick it up or turn it on. Instead, he simply changed his clothes and left the room. Outside, in the living room, thick black smoke billowed from the kitchen, and a petite figure moved about inside. "Boss, what are you doing?" Zinnian asked curiously. At his voice, the kitchen erupted in a clamor again. Then, a green-haired girl, her face sullen and smoked, emerged with a plate. "Making breakfast." "Boss, are you sure you're making breakfast?" Zinnian's mouth twitched slightly as he looked at the charred ham and bread. Lorna amended her tone, "This is what I wanted to eat. I'll go out and buy you something else." Zinnian shook his head and took the plate from Lorna. "Boss, I'm hungry. Give me a bite." "Don't." Lorna had barely finished her words when she saw the young man, seemingly hungry, stuffing the bread into his mouth, swallowing it with milk. "It tastes really good, almost as good as Wanda's." "Boss, you're quite talented at cooking." Zinnian forced a compliment. "Damn it, that's fake." Lorna gritted her teeth and turned away, her eyes red. Zinnian glanced at his aunt's room and, knowing she hadn't returned yet, whispered, "Boss, I need to go somewhere soon. You wait for me at home." Lorna suppressed something and nodded, "Okay, I'll wait." Whoosh! At that moment, the little orange cat and the man in the red cloak approached the boy. I'll stay here and guard the house until I come back." Zinnian's face was unusually pale, but his tone was resolute. This time, he didn't bring anyone, props, or even his phone. Wearing only casual clothes and carrying an umbrella, he headed out. He walked out of the community gate. A sweat broke out on Zinnian's forehead, his face pale and bloodless. He barely used his sky blue umbrella as a crutch to support himself as he continued walking. "Fortunately, I was almost exposed." Zinnian smiled, coughed a few times, and slowly walked out to the street. At this time, at home, Luna sat on the sofa. She hugged Xiaohuang tightly, tears streaming from the girl's eyes. She really regretted it. Regretted it more than ever before. She should have boarded the boat that day. If she hadn't boarded the boat, there wouldn't have been anything like what happened later, right? On the balcony, the starfish in the glass jar had a single eye full of sadness. It watched the boy merge into the crowd on the street outside, as if disappearing. On the advertising screen of the commercial building opposite, media people were describing that this is the era of superheroes. How can you understand that an era is about to decline? Guan Luo's spiritual mind shouted unwillingly, "Superhero? This era is called Zinnian." Chapter 309, End of Volume, Proposal, End of the Youth. Washington, D.C., a bustling street. Buildings towered around like a vast steel forest, screens and LED billboards of all sizes flashing brightly. The red light at the intersection flickered, and cars darted back and forth across the highway. At the sidewalk, a motley crowd of office workers and students paused, most of them scrolling through their phones. Suddenly, something cold descended from above upon those waiting to cross. A little girl held out her pale, tender palm, watching as tiny, white fluff of cotton fell onto her palm, melting slightly. "It's snowing. What kind of weather is this? It's almost summer, and we're actually snowing." Pedestrians stopped in their tracks, looking up at the sky, their voices trembling with wonder. Sky? Pale gray clouds obscured the sun, and snowflakes fell freely from the 10,000-meter-high dome. Whoosh! A dark-haired boy, also waiting for the light at the pedestrian intersection, exhaled and opened his umbrella. The raised, sky-blue umbrella looked like a glimpse of a sunny day. Snap! Nearby to the boy's left, someone else also opened their umbrella, this time a pure black one, like a glimpse of the night sky. The dark-haired boy glanced to the side. It was a Gothic woman in a black halter top. Her chest, defined by two perfectly defined curves, revealed her perfectly formed collarbones and pale arms. She wore matching, brand-new black jeans. Her shoulder-length black hair was neat and sleek, and her lips, painted with dark lipstick, exuded a mysterious and alluring allure. The black eyeliner on her right eye curved into a musical note, and she wore a silver cross on her chest. Her appearance alone was undoubtedly a beauty, but her aura was even more remarkable. Elegant yet casual, mysterious yet approachable, silent yet lively. This was a very beautiful, very attractive adult woman. The boy thought for a long time, but couldn't find a good description. As if sensing his gaze, the Gothic woman, also holding a small black umbrella, glanced at him and gave him a casual smile. It was a bit cold, yet it also gave him an inexplicable warmth. "Brother, where are you going if you're not going to school this morning?" the Gothic woman asked, her voice calm and pleasant. Nian hadn't expected her to initiate a conversation. He suppressed a cough, a happy smile on his delicate, pale face. "I'm going somewhere, waiting for someone." "That person must be very important," the Gothic woman said, staring ahead. "Yes, more important than my life," Nian nodded solemnly. "What if you can't wait for her?" The Gothic woman glanced at Nian, her beautiful eyes deep and mysterious. "She will definitely come." Nian's confidence in her was far greater than his own. The Gothic woman thought for a moment and nodded gently. "That's right." Ahead, the red light on the sidewalk turned green. People hurried through the snow. Nian and the Gothic woman walked slowly, side by side, across the highway, catching the last second of the green light. "Sister, where are you going?" Nian asked curiously. "I have nothing to do, just taking a walk." The Gothic woman shrugged. "It's just right, so I'll go with you to where you're waiting." "Then, can you give me a hand?" Nian asked. The Gothic woman was silent for a moment. She looked at the boy beside her, finally letting out a soft breath, as if helpless. "Come on." She extended her right hand, equally pale as a work of art. Nian took it without hesitation. It felt cold, yet a little warm, and his steps seemed unsteady. The Gothic woman supported the black-haired boy and continued walking through the snowy streets. They crossed 2 streets, 3 roads, until they arrived at a riverside park. It wasn't a long journey, but it took an eternity. "Right here, right." Arriving at the park entrance, the Gothic woman patiently helped the boy stand, humming softly, "You wait, I won't go in with you, so I don't end up being a third wheel." "Thank you." Nian released her hand and took a step forward, suddenly turning back to the woman and asking, "Sister, are you the god of death?" "Death? No, I'm not," the Gothic woman waved her hand casually. "Really? I was thinking, if the god of death really were such a beautiful and kind sister." Nian smiled, then turned around, holding his umbrella, and walked into the park alone. The Gothic woman raised her beautiful eyebrows and watched the boy disappear into the park. She couldn't help but mutter softly, "Strange ability, really good at seducing women. Fortunately, I don't." "Oh, strange." The Gothic woman was stunned for a moment, rubbing her chest, feeling a slight tingling sensation. What was this strange feeling? Just as they entered the park, Nian bumped into an elderly man strolling along the gravel path. Nian was stunned. Though the old man before him wore ordinary earth shirt and trousers, his pale hair, a black eye patch over his right eye, and a weathered, square face, wasn't that the god King Odin who once sat aloft on the throne of Asgard, clad in golden armor and draped with a golden mantle of honor? This old god king. He hadn't sensed him yesterday in his super body mode. No. Nian quickly realized it wasn't because Odin was too powerful that he hadn't sensed him, but because Odin was too weak now. His divine power was dwindling, his body decaying, no different from an ordinary human. Nian tried to pretend he didn't recognize him, but Odin waved at him. "Old man, do you know me?" Nian asked curiously. Odin replied, "Aren't you the prince kid?" "You." Nian was stunned. On his last trip to Asgard, he had been in symbiote form, attached to his aunt, so Odin shouldn't have seen him in the flesh. Unless, even before that, Odin had secretly observed him. "God King," Nian greeted him respectfully, no longer concealing anything. "I am no longer God King." Odin's face was calm, and he spoke calmly. "I was banished from the god realm by Loki. My time is almost up, and I estimate I only have 3 years left. As befits a god, even nearing his death, he still has 3 years to live. And before that, Odin had lived for countless millennia. Your body." Odin observed Nian's form with his one eye. "It should be today," Nian nodded calmly. "Yesterday, I saw you, even more majestic than I was in my youth. I never thought you would soon pass away, an old man like me." Odin shook his head and said sincerely, "Given your physical condition, even the elven magic and divine sorcery of Asgard wouldn't be able to save you." Now, Odin was no longer aloof and imposing, but truly just an ordinary old man. Nian felt a strange sense of emotion. After a moment's thought, he said, "Back then, in the god's realm." "I know." Odin, as if he knew what he was about to say, said calmly, "I cheated, too." I was the one who opened the Rainbow Bridge. Without it, Thor would have been defeated by Prince's trick on Earth. What a shame. Odin gave Nian another deep look, his aged face lost in thought. Without you, I wouldn't have been able to stop her. It's a lose-lose bet. Nian remained silent. They were both dying, and he would go first. Odin bid farewell to the old god king. Nian came to a public bench by the river in the park, wiped off the fresh snow, set his folded umbrella aside, and sat down to wait. Meanwhile, snowflakes drifted, a cold breeze blew off the lake. The park was deserted, even the joggers and morning exercisers were gone. The sudden drop in temperature reminded Nian of Christmas Eve 17 years ago. It was here that he met the whole world. Horizontal ellipsis. The light snow stopped, covering the city with a thin layer of white gauze. The sun moved to the west, night was approaching, and the day was about to end. Nian was still sitting alone in the chair waiting. When he had little time left, waiting was obviously long and torturous enough. But if he knew that the person would definitely arrive here, his heart would be warm enough to bloom. Finally. At the moment before night fell, as the sunlight disappeared, a golden light flashed across the river like a dragon, and an extremely familiar figure fell from the sky in front of the young man. And, you are here. Nian couldn't help laughing. He was actually a little panicked, afraid that he would not be able to hold on until that time. Wonder Woman Diana clutched the lasso of truth, panting and clearly having been on the road all along. She looked at Nian with a mixture of anger and heartache. Why didn't you wait for me at home? Why did you have to come all the way here? What if I can't find you? How could that be? You'd have known I was here. Nian looked around innocently and smiled. Auntie, these past few days, I've been thinking about this place. It's where I first met you. Wonder Woman swallowed her words of reproach. She quickly stepped forward, hugged the boy, who was a little stiff in the chair, and patted his head. Yes, time flies. You've grown so much? Nian was about to say something. At that moment, Wonder Woman suddenly squatted in front of Nian, pulled out a colorful crystal from her arms, and said urgently, "Make a wish." Nian's eyes fell on the crystal in his aunt's hand. This is one of the ancient artifacts left behind by the gods of Mount Olympus. The wishing stone, capable of granting any wish. Wonder Woman's beautiful eyes shone with hope and expectation as she spoke quickly, "Make a wish now. You'll be fine. Trust me, you will." Nian took the crystal stone, which glowed with a brilliant hue. Under Wonder Woman's gaze, Nian suddenly grasped the space necklace with his free hand. With a flash of blue light, the crystal stone vanished from his hand. "What, did you?" Wonder Woman exclaimed in shock. "The wishing stone." Nian shook his head and said, "If such a magical artifact truly existed that granted wishes, how could the ancient gods have left the stage so early? And, this is just a conspiracy of the evil ancient gods, like Pandora's box. Once opened, the world will be overturned and in chaos. The wisher's true wish will never be granted. It will only exploit the power of the wisher and those around them. How could this be?" Wonder Woman was struck by lightning, her perfect body trembling, her beautiful eyes trembling with turmoil. "And, you're so smart, how could you not have thought of this? It's just that you were seduced by its so-called wish." Nian said with a pale face, "I moved it to a safe place, where no one will ever find it. Don't worry, the world is fine now." Snap! Wonder Woman fell to her knees, her hands on the park ground, looking more helpless than ever. When the last ray of hope was shattered, what followed was a despair as dark as a tide. Ahead, a soft kneeling sound was heard. Wonder Woman was slightly startled. It was Nian who also stood up from the chair, knelt on one knee, fumbled around his body, and took out an ordinary and simple ring. Nian took a deep breath and said seriously, "Diana, marry me." A trace of crystal water passed across Wonder Woman's face. She looked up blankly and stared at the weak boy in front of her. "What did you say?" "I said, marry me," Nian repeated. "What did you call me, Diana?" Wonder Woman wiped the tears from her eyes, stretched out a glistening finger, and tapped the boy's forehead with it. "Auntie." Nian feigned pain, curling her lips. Wonder Woman looked at the quaint ring on the boy's hand and burst out laughing. "Who taught you that? Should boys date before proposing?" Nian quickly corrected himself, "Then from now on, you're my girlfriend." Wonder Woman realized that she had been tricked. Nian was about to stand up, but the ring disappeared from his hand. He looked forward again. My aunt already clutched the ring firmly in her hand, as if entering Wonder Woman mode, and said forcefully, "No matter what, you have to give it to me." Of course. Nian reached out and squeezed Wonder Woman's slender waist, inhaling the violet scent of her rounded breasts, as if he had traveled to this world just for this moment. This isn't practice. I'm hugging my girlfriend. That's normal, right? Yes, it's normal. Wonder Woman, a head taller than Nian, wrapped her slender arms around him and whispered, "I'm sorry, I didn't protect you." That's not the case. I should be apologizing for not being able to stay by your side. As night fell, the two figures seemed to overlap. For 17 years, whether the gods had tamed humanity or the gods had become dependent on humanity no longer mattered. Everything had led to this moment, a complete union of body and soul. Nothing in the universe can separate us. No matter where I go in the future, I will return to you. Nian promised. Because, you and I being together was a fact that was destined from the moment we crossed into this world. I'm just going to finish it here and give you some flowers. Does it seem out of place? Haha. Anyway, a chapter is finished. You all know that I will definitely give a small summary at the end of the chapter and fill in some holes. However, the holes I dig will definitely become more and more. Tomorrow I will enter the next chapter. I hope that all book friends will continue to support me. Chapter 310. 3 years later. Another spring. In Morningside Heights, Manhattan, on the banks of the Hudson River, in New York City, sits Columbia University. As one of the 5 oldest universities in the United States and one of the universities with the most Nobel Prize winners, it undoubtedly attracts the most talented. The winter snow had just melted, and spring had arrived, bringing a warm and humanistic atmosphere to the campus. A young white man, backpack on his back, entered the campus, like Randy Liu entering the Grandview Garden. He surveyed the lush green lawns, the willow-lined riverbank, the seniors discussing knowledge and clutching books, the clean and artistic ivory towers and the academic buildings. His face was filled with excitement. Being a freshman at Columbia was truly a dream come true. Just then, the freshman paused, his eyes flashing with amazement. He saw 2 women walking side by side on the avenue, under the bright sunshine. The woman on the left had brilliant, shoulder-length blonde hair, elegantly tucked behind her right ear, revealing a delicate, petite face. Her figure was slightly petite, yet her shirt and uniform accentuated a pair of alluring, rounded curves. Her slender waist was draped in tight jeans, revealing a pair of long, tight legs. Her delicate feet were clad in a pair of extremely small, low-top black boots. The woman on the right had waist-length platinum hair, gleaming brightly as she moved. Her fair, delicate features shone brightly, and her smile was incredibly sweet. She was slightly taller, and from her collarbone down, her arms, shoulders, waist, legs, and feet seemed perfectly proportioned. Her figure was graceful and elegant, like the most perfect female clothes hanger, her uniform faintly highlighting the perfectly defined curves of her muscles. The two, one dashing, the other sweet, one intellectual, the other gentle, dressed in their school uniform shirts, strolling down the street with books in hand, were clearly the most beautiful sight in the college. The freshman was stunned for a moment, only to recover after they had walked away. Senior. The freshman grabbed a bespectacled male student who was passing by. "Classmate, what's up?" the male student asked politely, adjusting his black-rimmed glasses. The freshman swallowed and asked quickly, "Are those 2 from our school?" The male student glanced at the 2 figures as they retreated, then said, "Oh, you're freshmen, right?" The freshman nodded. "After all, if they were seniors, they definitely know them," the male student said. "They're Gwen, a junior from the School of Engineering, and Kara, a sophomore from the School of Humanities. I heard they went to high school, so they often hang out together." "So, they..." Before the freshman could finish, the male student interrupted him. "You mean to ask if they have boyfriends? As far as I know, they probably don't. Should. Anyway, you'd better give up quickly, or you'll end up in trouble later." The male student patted the freshman on the shoulder and sighed, with the air of a seasoned veteran. "Those 2 are not only stunningly beautiful and well-built, but they're also top students in their respective schools. Many people have tried to pursue them, not just at our school, but at other prestigious universities as well. All failed." The freshman scratched his head. The male student spread his hands. "That's only natural. Let me remind you, if you pursue them normally, they'll just politely reject you. If you persist or try other tactics, well, you'll end up in a terrible situation. Miserable. The freshman said with a hint of disapproval. The male student looked at him and sighed, a flicker of pity flashing through his eyes behind his glasses. This guy, he still doesn't understand the dangers of this. On the avenue of the academy. Senior, why don't you come to my house for lunch this weekend? My cousin has something good to announce, Kara suggested. No problem. Gwen agreed immediately, gently tucking her hair and smiling. Haven't I told you many times? No need to call me senior or anything like that, just call me Gwen. I'm used to it, isn't it? Besides, it always feels like. Kara stopped talking. As if she knew what she was thinking, Gwen's jewel-like eyes dimmed. She lowered her head and whispered, so, it's been 3 years. Kara was silent. Well, I've been with him since elementary school. Over a decade, the longest we've been apart has only been a week. Gwen forced a smile. So, in these 3 years, I've always thought he was still with me. Sorry, senior. I shouldn't have brought that up, Kara apologized. How could I not mention it? Gwen shook her head. He's an inseparable part of my life, and yours as well. How could I not mention it? At this point, Gwen took a deep breath, calming herself. I'm sorry, I lost my composure. I missed him so much. I know. Kara nodded. She squeezed Gwen's hand firmly. After a moment's silence, she suddenly smiled. Would you like to go to Prince's this weekend before going to my cousin's? Gwen's eyes lit up again, and she nodded. Okay, let's go together and bring gifts. Tap tap. On a pedestrian street in Washington, D.C., a mysterious figure in a hooded coat stopped in front of a shop. Looking up, one could vaguely make out it was a flower shop. A 2-story shop, its doors and windows shuttered, a sign reading closed. The facade was covered in withered vines, dust, and cobwebs. It seemed as if it had closed down and had been neglected for a long time, gradually forgotten in a corner of this bustling city. Finally, I found you, my dearest friend, the mysterious being whispered to himself. Friday afternoon, nearing nightfall. In a quiet and peaceful town outside Washington, D.C. A van pulled up to the side of the road, its engine shut off, and the lights dimmed. Hope, if Hank, your dad finds out, he'll definitely give me a stern scold. Don't worry, just be quick. He won't know. I hope so. Scott laying sighed from the driver's seat as he listened to the soft female voice over the communicator. He really didn't want to return to his old ways, theft. But who could blame him for commissioning this? It was his current girlfriend, Hope. Scott felt helpless, yet also a little curious. As Dr. Hank's only daughter and a former co-founder of PIM Technologies, Miss Hope should have plenty of money. And now he was being asked to steal something from someone else's house. This was truly a disgrace to the second-generation Ant-Man. Oh, it seemed Ant-Man wasn't exactly famous. Compared to Iron Man, Batman, Spider-Woman, and Supergirl, his fame was nowhere near as high. To put it bluntly, his fame is only in the single digits. Inside the car, Scott donned a suit resembling a motorcycle rider's outfit, covering himself up from head to toe. After operating the controller on his wrist, the adult man's body suddenly shrank to invisibility. A few seconds later, buzz! A flying ant fluttered through the crack in the car window, flew out into the vast night. If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 311 Cat Jellyfish, Maid, Extreme Danger. In a small town outside Washington, D.C., the sun sets and night falls, providing excellent natural cover for the shrunken Scott. Even if approached closely, no one would notice a grown man as tiny as an ant. Riding his flying engineer ant, Scott approached the destination of his theft, an ordinary 3-story villa on the edge of town, its yard filled with flowers, plants, and trees. Under the cover of darkness, Scott, now Ant-Man, had intended to use the engineer ants to directly invade from the air. But as he approached the villa's yard, he abruptly stopped the ants. Something's wrong. What's wrong? Hope asked from the other end of the communicator. The engineer ants hovered 50 meters above the villa. Scott, gazing down at the darkened villa below, said gravely, I don't know. My gut tells me that if we just barge in, we'll be discovered, and the consequences will be disastrous. Hope, I believe in science, not in intuition. Given the size of you and the engineer ants, even surveillance cameras can't catch you. Trust me, Scott said gravely. My intuition has saved me many times. And this time, it's stronger than ever. Hope was silent for a moment, then said, to be safe, let's enter through the sewers. A few minutes later. Underground, in the sewer pipes, fiery red fire ants swarmed into an ant raft. Ant-Man Scott, slightly larger than the fire ants, stood on top, following the flow of the sewer water to the base of the villa. Hope, I also need to know who owns this villa. I need all the information you know, or I'll abort the operation, Scott said solemnly. He had previously thought this was a relatively simple infiltration operation. Now it seemed that this villa and this operation were definitely not simple. Hope knew Scott was serious, and couldn't help but say, the villa's owner is Alice. She's just the daughter of an old British brewing family. She rarely comes to the villa, and for a long time, it's been run entirely by a maid. A very good friend of mine asked me to take something from the safe here. Friend? Male or female? Scott asked. Female. Hope said unhappily. Oh, right. She said to be careful of 3 things in the villa. What are they? Scott raised a brow. Cats, jellyfish, and the maid. Hope said, the maid won't be at the villa tonight, so just be wary of cats and jellyfish. Ant-Man Scott was completely bewildered. Cats were fine, but what about jellyfish? Were there even jellyfish in the villa? Ant-Man silently leaped from the sink drain on the first floor of the villa. As he leaped, still in the air, Ant-Man Scott felt a chill run down his spine, a sense of being watched washed over him. I've been discovered. Boom boom boom. On the second floor of the villa, the sound of something moving resonated. It quickly spread up the stairs and approached the ground floor below. Scott quickly ducked into the narrow corner of the bathroom. The moment Ant-Man had hidden, the faint sound of someone descending the stairs suddenly faded. The deserted villa, with the lights off, was deserted, and everything inside returned to silence. Scott held his breath. As he peered through the crack in the door, he saw a glint of cyan flames in the living room outside the first floor, scanning the ground floor. It was a cat. Though the darkness made it difficult to see clearly, Scott knew it was a cat. A cat the size of 2 adult palms. It was just a cat, and even Ant-Man, with his fighting power, wouldn't be able to. Scott's pupils suddenly constricted. It was obvious, outside the living room. Buzz! A mosquito swooped in from the yard, before it fully entered the first floor living room. Whoosh! The cat made no move, and the air exploded, a terrifying gust of wind whipping up as a ferocious tentacle-like tail retracted. And as for the mosquito, where were the mosquitoes? Scott gasped. What was that just now? A cat's tail, had it just stretched out 4 meters? What the hell? At this moment, the cat, having retracted its tail, slowly turned, sniffed the air, its eyes fixed on the bathroom, and quietly approached. Had the cat spotted him? Impossible. Ant-Man Scott felt his heart nearly leap. Fight or flee? Just as the cat was within 3 meters of the bathroom, Scott's communicator suddenly chimed, "What's going on?" "Stump." The cat's pace quickened. "It's over." Ant-Man Scott gritted his teeth, preparing to return to adult size. But then, a strange sound emanated from the villa's courtyard. The cat's steps abruptly stopped, and it turned and sprinted towards the courtyard. Watching the small orange figure disappear outside the courtyard, Ant-Man Scott breathed a sigh of relief. It was a close call, Scott replied, then froze. On the bathroom floor, translucent shadows emerged from the darkness, a swarm of tiny, golf ball-sized, almost transparent jellyfish. Like a dazzling, transparent ocean wave, the strange swarm of jellyfish surrounded the tiny, and like Scott from all sides. 3 minutes later, on the second floor of the villa, a man's figure rapidly grew from ant-sized to adult size. Scott clutched the helmet of his Ant-Man suit, gasping for air, his eyes filled with fear. He'd almost died, nearly perished in the mysterious swarm of jellyfish. If it weren't for the ant's sacrifice and rescue, he'd be dead by now. But, no matter what, he had reached his final destination. Ant-Man Scott entered a room on the second floor of the villa and looked at a metal safe that served as a door. Everything was spotless, clearly meticulously maintained daily. What surprised Scott was the lack of any surveillance cameras. Indeed, with the cat and the jellyfish watching over them, there was no need for a surveillance alarm. Ant-Man Scott arrived at the metal safe and found no opening to break in. To his surprise, the door had no fingerprint, pupil, or facial recognition capabilities. How did this security system verify identity? He checked the metal material of the safe door. Ant-Man Scott froze again. He'd forgotten how many times this brilliant thief had been stunned tonight. It's not titanium alloy, nor any other known metal. Hope, speaking from the communicator, was silent for a moment, then exclaimed in surprise, "Could it be the kind of metal?" "What kind?" Scott asked. "My father once said there's a sound-absorbing metal that can absorb kinetic energy. It's the hardest metal on Earth, vibranium." "Are you saying this entire giant safe is made of the same ultra-rare material as Captain America's shield?" Scott chuckled bitterly. "Are you kidding me? Isn't that metal so rare that it's priceless, exists only in legend, and cannot be made into anything due to its extreme strength?" Chapter 312 White Hair, Wonder Woman. Outside the villa, in the darkness of night, a woman, agile as a wild animal, used the town's numerous low-rise buildings as footholds, leaping and sprinting with her hands and feet. Behind her, another, smaller, orange-yellow figure, pursued her even faster. Whoosh, whoosh. Like Parker, carrying a powerful wind. At a speed that ordinary cars could hardly match, the two figures, one large and one small, moved one after the other, moving away from the villa area and into the remote mountains and forests surrounding the town. The distance between them grew closer and closer. With a snap, leaping from the third floor of her house, the woman, as if realizing she couldn't shake off the presence behind her, stopped at the edge of the wilderness. Coincidentally, the moon in the town's night sky broke through the dark clouds. In the faint, bright silver light, a head of silver hair shone brightly, a soft, black cat tail swaying from side to side. A pair of shiny black cat ears twitched, and the woman's beautiful eyes, like those of a cat, glowed with a green light. Under her extremely vigilant and nervous gaze, a small orange figure suddenly stopped in front of her. It was a ginger cat, already well past its kitten stage. It looked harmless, just like any other ginger cat, with a heart-shaped nameplate around its neck, Prince Family. "Your name is Little Emperor, right? I mean no offense, I just wanted to check in." The adult cat, wearing a tight black leather jacket that accentuated her curvaceous figure, waved her hand and spoke softly. "By the way, let me introduce myself. My name is Black Cat, or Felicia Hardy. I'm—" Before Felicia could finish her words, the ginger cat's eyes seemed to burn with a fierce blue flame, its mouth curled into a cruel and terrifying arc, its fang-covered tentacles erupted, and it suddenly lunged forward, its fur standing on end. To it, any creature that trespassed there without permission must die. In downtown Washington, a prestigious law firm nestled in a prime urban area. "All my work is done, and I'm going home early tonight," a gentle yet confident female voice echoed. "Yes, Ms. Diana." The young assistant in a formal suit replied respectfully. She stole a glance at the beautiful figure sitting at the main desk, her eyes filled with longing. I longed to be like Ms. Diana, a wealthy and beautiful woman who could come and go at will. But that wasn't right. Even as a partner, Ms. Diana had never once used her boss's privileges, always leaving only after a successful day's work. Add to that the perfect figure of a top model, flawless, divinely sculpted features, skin that needed no makeup, muscular curves devoid of a trace of excess fat, and a noble, elegant demeanor, an intellectually confident charm. She was truly perfect, the young assistant thought to herself. But what puzzled her was that Ms. Diana never socialized, always going home after finishing work, especially in the last 3 years. "I don't know who Miss Diana's boyfriend is, I've never heard her mention him." The young assistant's gaze drifted to the quaint ring on the ring finger of the figure in front of her, and she felt a surge of envy. He must have saved the world in his past life. After the assistant left the office worker sat in a chair and began to gather documents. Looking at the ring on her right hand, the dark-haired woman's expression was noticeably dazed. Suddenly, the office door swung open without warning. The dark-haired woman looked up and saw a beautiful young woman in a leopard print coat, tapping on high heels. "Diana, long time no see." She locked the office door behind her. The beautiful woman smiled charmingly, swaying her voluptuous figure as she sat down in the chair in front of the desk. "Barbara." Diana put down the documents she was holding and looked directly at her former best friend. Without changing her expression, she asked softly, "What's your plan this time?" As if she were accustomed to this. "Barbara," The leopard-printed woman shed her coat and draped it over the back of a chair. She rested her elbow on the table, resting her chin. She licked her alluring, rosy lips and said, "I don't have any ulterior motives. I came here just to catch up with you." "Then tell me, where have you been these past few years?" Diana asked bluntly, her eyes gleaming with wisdom. Barbara was speechless, then sighed, "We'll have to keep it a secret for now, or you'll definitely mess things up. I know you too well, you always get involved in matters that have nothing to do with you." She changed the subject, "But if we trade secrets, I can tell you." "What do you want to know?" Diana asked. "I want to know what happened 3 years ago." Barbara smiled. "Even though he disappeared 3 years ago, you haven't held a funeral or memorial service. I want to know, is he really?" Bang! The chair exploded. Catwoman Barbara's body suddenly flew backward, her back slamming into the side of the office wall, sinking inwards to form a distinct human-shaped crater. "That's unlike you. This is your workplace, disguised as a normal person. Aren't you afraid of being exposed?" Barbara, holding onto the dented wall, stepped out, suddenly feeling a chill. "Step." Diana nimbly climbed over the disc and stepped forward, her hair untied. Her original elegance and intelligence transformed into pure wildness and dominance. "Barbara, you can ask anything else, but you shouldn't mention him." Diana's beautiful eyes seemed frozen with coldness. "Ha, that's it. Every time I mention him, you're like this." Barbara sneered. "Come on, Diana. Show me your true form. It's been ages since we've sparred. Don't let me down." As she spoke, a leopard's tail emerged from behind Barbara, lashing against the wall. Sharp claws extended from her hands, grasping the air. Hair sprouted from her beautiful face and slender limbs, transforming her into a humanoid female leopard of unparalleled wild beauty. Furthermore, after her bestial transformation, Leopard Barbara ripped open the remaining shroud of her shirt, revealing a string of sharp, white, primitive leopard ivory jewelry adorning her intact neck. Swish! The leopard ivory jewelry rose upwards, forming a silver leopard head helmet. Downwards, the metal extended along the flesh and skin, forming a seamless, one-piece, tight-fitting leopard-like combat suit. The transformed Leopard Barbara donned a complete silver-white leopard-shaped combat suit. "This is the result of my 3 years of work, a silver panther suit made of vibranium to hunt you." Cheetah sneered. Diana said nothing more. Her white shirt and trousers transformed into Wonder Woman's exclusive armor and dress. 2 swords, one gold and one silver, inscribed with patterns from different mythological systems, appeared at her waist and back, respectively. A noble crown appeared on her forehead, and a pair of bracelets adorned her wrists. 3 years had passed. The perfect and powerful deity was no different from before. Except, Cheetah was suddenly startled, staring blankly at Diana, who had returned to her original Wonder Woman form. Her once soft, shiny black hair had faded to white. No. Cheetah suddenly realized that the white hair was Diana's true appearance, and the black hair was the result of her daily disguise. Chapter 313 Quantum Space, Inside the Vibranium Safe. Rumble. In the dark night, countless birds and beasts fled in terror. Trees collapsed one after another, as if under a brutal attack from several bulldozers. Felicia, calling herself Black Cat, a cat-like creature, fled deeper into the forest, leaping from tree trunk to tree trunk like a humanoid black cat. And with each leap, the tree trunk the black cat had stepped on was crushed by several ferocious tentacles that emerged from the darkness behind it. This was a battle between 2 cats, a black cat and an orange cat. Wait, the enemy was even less cat-like than she. Felicia swallowed hard, quickly dodging the tentacle attack, and glanced back in horror to see the small orange cat clinging to her tail. The orange cat's mouth opened into a bloody maw, from which extended 4 or 5 fang-covered tentacles. Tentacles could easily extend over 10 meters, uprooting a tree with a single sweep, plunging it, along with the soil, into the vast, black hole-like maw. The previously adorable little orange cat was actually an alien. Taming such a creature as a family pet would be even more terrifying. Luckily, I don't have to fight it. Just buying time is enough, Felicia, the black cat, thought to herself. Just running away like this would work. What Felicia didn't notice was, behind her, the orange cat in pursuit. A hint of impatience flickered in its eyes. Then, its smooth orange fur strangely turned a dark, apathetic black. As if clad in a mysterious exoskeleton, its eyes turned a cold, indifferent white. The cat grinned, devilishly. Where's the cat? Felicia ran away when she suddenly realized the pursuit had ceased. She looked back, but there was no sign of the orange cat named Little Emperor. But the sense of danger hadn't dissipated. Instead, it made her hair stand on end. Felicia the black cat didn't pause. Instead, she gritted her teeth, increasing her speed as much as she could, dashing deep into the forest. She fled several miles further. Even after sprinting at full speed, Felicia's strength was beginning to wear thin. At this distance, the enemy must have given up. Felicia glanced back as she ran, only to see a silent forest. But just as she turned back, her once splendid face paled. Nearby, a black shadow crouched, its bloody maw opening towards her. The black hole instantly enveloped her. At that moment, Felicia could clearly smell death. "No. I know your master." Felicia the black cat had barely finished her words when her maw closed, swallowing her graceful form completely. The cat wiped its mouth and shook its tail. The darkness receded like a tide, returning to its original orange-yellow hue. It took a step, transforming into a streak of orange light as it returned to the villa. Now, in a small town, on the second floor of a seemingly quiet villa, in the room housing the massive safe, Ant-Man Scott was deeply troubled. He had tried every possible method, but he still couldn't damage the door-like safe, let alone break into it. And understandably so. After all, it was vibranium. If vibranium were so easily broken, would it still be called vibranium? Now, in Washington, on the top floor of a commercial building, a head of wiry white hair danced wildly in the night breeze. A tall, flawless Greek demigod stood high on the rooftop railing. In one hand, she held a silver sword shimmering with divine light, and in the other, she grasped a rope imbued with the golden light and power. The golden rope descended, binding Barbara, the leopard woman, clad in a silver vibranium battlesuit and resembling a humanoid female panther, and dangling high in the air. How is this possible? This is my vibranium suit. Cheetah's eyes were filled with disbelief as she stared at her severed vibranium claws. With her full vibranium suit, her combat power had more than doubled. Yet, she was defeated so quickly, even faster than before. Cheetah cried out in disbelief, "Diana, how can you be so strong? So much stronger than 3 years ago." The white-haired Wonder Woman remained expressionless, shaking her head slightly. "Now it's my turn to ask you, what is your motive?" Cheetah Barbara unconsciously opened her mouth, bound by the lasso of truth, and began to speak the truth. Inside a villa outside Washington, Ant-Man Scott looked helpless. He had just confirmed that not only the safe door, but the entire giant safe was made of vibranium. The safe itself was priceless. And what was stored inside, it was undeniable. Ant-Man, who had originally shown little interest in the mission itself, was now curious about what was stored in the vibranium safe. But if he couldn't get in, everything would be in vain. "Give up, Scott, you can't get in," even Hope on the other end of the communicator advised. "Actually, there's another way to get in, the only way," Scott mused. "You mean shrinking to subatomic size and passing through vibranium? You're crazy," Hope shouted. "Even though you've made it out of the quantum realm alive once, it doesn't mean you can do it every time." "Yes. So, I have no choice but to give up." Scott shrugged helplessly. He wasn't about to risk his life again. But then, there was a noise outside the villa yard. "That cat is back." Scott's face changed drastically, and he quickly shrank to the size of an ant. At the same time, a woman's thoughts echoed in his mind, "You can't escape anymore. Enter the vibranium safe quickly, or you're dead." "Who are you?" Ant-Man Scott cried out in surprise. The woman's thoughts continued, "I've entrusted you with this mission. Hurry. If you don't get in, you're dead." Ant-Man Scott, hearing the faint movement on the stairs, knew the mysterious woman was right. There was no other option but to hide inside the vibranium safe. "No, Scott." Hope hurried over the communicator. "I'll die." Ant-Man gritted his teeth. As the cat stepped onto the second floor, he switched the controls to shrink even further. His already ant-sized body shrank so small it vanished on the spot. Passing through the vibranium, Ant-Man, shrinking infinitely, fell into a fantastical and dazzling dimension where the concepts of time and space seemed to blur. Reality distorted, the quantum realm. Ant-Man was lost in it until he heard a faint, age-tinged female voice. He suddenly regained consciousness and instinctively manipulated the controls on his Ant-Man suit to return to his original size. Swish! Restored to the size of a full-grown man, Scott had passed through the vibranium portal and appeared inside the vibranium safe. Here is. Scott took off his Ant-Man helmet and looked at the contents of the vibranium vault. He couldn't help but open his mouth wide. Inside the vibranium safe, there was actually a room. Chapter 314: The Dead Boy and the Unsolved Maid. Ant-Man Scott, clutching his armor helmet, stood lost in thought inside the vibranium locker. Rather than a vibranium locker, the spacious interior more closely resembled a vibranium vault. The locker itself was arranged like a room, neither too large nor too small. That's right, within this massive safe, crafted from priceless vibranium, lay a room. A perfectly ordinary single room. Inside, there was a desk with a computer and books, a wardrobe filled with neatly arranged young men's clothing, and walls covered in framed pictures and paintings. Even the floor and curtains seemed perfectly recreated. Scott was stunned. This room didn't feel like a purpose-built room, it looked like an original room had been completely relocated and stored there. Every item in the room bore a certain age, at least 3 or 4 years old. Yet, everything was neat and tidy, not a speck of clutter or dust, as if meticulously cleaned and tidied daily. The room was silent. Only the alarm clock on the bedside table ticked softly, tick, tick, tick. Ant-Man Scott seemed to faintly hear the passage of time. The vibranium vault in this villa had frozen everything in a certain room 3 years ago, as if time and its very essence were stored there. It was clearly just an ordinary room. Scott's slightly dirty outdoor boots pattered against the polished floor, and for some reason, he felt a strong sense of guilt, as if he had tread upon a sacred and forbidden ground. Wait, what's that? Ant-Man Scott froze again, looking at the bed in his current room. The blue curtains were half drawn, and a figure could be vaguely seen lying on the bed. No way. Scott instinctively stepped forward, but his hand gently pulled open the curtains, as if he didn't want to disturb anyone. He could see a black-haired boy lying on the bed. His face was delicate and fair, the childishness barely fading. He was about 18 years old, wearing a silver necklace around his neck and a thin blanket covering his chest. His hands were clasped together. The boy slept peacefully, his face pale, and he wasn't breathing. Scott's eyes widened in surprise. A young man's body was here? That wasn't right. Although the man's face was pale, his skin was smooth and radiant. He didn't look like a corpse at all, more like he was asleep. Hope, did you see that? Who is he? Scott asked hurriedly into the communicator. Ant-Man's suit was equipped with a surveillance camera, allowing Hope to see him from behind. We're checking. Hope paused, then quickly replied, the file shows his name is Nian Prince, a former high school student at Washington Middle School. His guardian is Diana Prince, and he was reported missing 3 years ago. How is that possible? How could an ordinary person have so much vibranium, and the cat and jellyfish defending this place? Scott asked, puzzled. He's an ordinary person? What do you know? The mysterious woman's thoughts echoed through Scott's mind again, but fortunately, with your help, a part of my spirit was able to enter here and see him again. I didn't expect he was truly dead. The mysterious woman muttered to herself. No, his body is clearly still alive, but there's no trace of his mind. What do you mean? Scott asked gravely. Let me put it this way. His current physical condition is like that of a vegetative state. But most vegetative states have subtle mental fluctuations. But he has none at all. It's like he's lost his soul. The soul is dead, but the body is still alive, perhaps even immortal. The mysterious woman sighed. As expected of him, his death was so surprising. At that moment, Ant-Man's communicator rang with Hope's alarm. Scott, my back-end system's been hacked, rustling. The connection suddenly disconnected. Before Scott could react, the mysterious woman's voice echoed in his head. Oh no. She's back. She? Who's back? Scott, startled, donned his Ant-Man suit helmet. He heard a slight movement behind him. He quickly turned to see a crimson-haired girl in a red-maid dress, landing lightly in black boots in front of the safe door. Her crimson hair, flowing to her waist, and the hem of her dress, which fell to her knees, were gorgeous and elegant, yet exuded an undeniable coldness. The scarlet girl looked at the stained floor and the motorcyclist approaching the bed, her eyes and face growing increasingly cold. Maid. Was this the maid I'd been talking about? Scott didn't think she was dangerous. She looked only 14 or 15, soft and adorable, like a real doll. Hello. Scott waved, and the scene before him flashed. The scarlet maid had already leaped in front of him, her small hand thrusting out a swift and powerful palm. Bang! Hit him square in the stomach. Ant-Man didn't think the force was very strong, but it sent his body hunching like a shrimp, sending his adult-sized body flying backwards. In that instant, behind Scott was the boy's bed, but before his body could hit the curtains, his arched back shattered the mirrored space. Crash! The space shattered like layers of glass. Ant-Man broke through the mirror and fell to the other side behind it. Fall, 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 fall. The star-studded night sky and the vibrant lights of a city were reversed. Ant-Man Scott was shocked to find himself in midair, plummeting towards the town below. The electromagnetic force of Ant-Man's suit's instruments couldn't detect the location of a single ant. Holy crap! Ant-Man Scott, in midair, quickly adjusted the suit's controls, his body suddenly expanding, transforming into a giant dozens of times larger than a normal human. With a plop, as if falling from a height of several meters, the giant Ant-Man landed flat on his back in the pool, splashing water everywhere. Sorry, I'll pay for it. Ant-Man glanced at the nearby building, only to find it was completely empty. The giant Ant-Man looked around in astonishment. Not only the nearby building, but the entire town itself, was devoid of any sign of life. Crack! The sound of a shattering mirror echoed again. Sitting on the ground, Ant-Man Scott's eyes widened as he saw a graceful diamond form, bound by golden threads, being pulled in from the nearby shattered mirror. You forced me to do this. Diamond Woman uttered the voice of the mysterious woman in Ant-Man's mind. A wave of telepathy surged forth, sweeping along the golden thread toward the Crimson Girl at the end. The Crimson Girl remained unmoved. Her petite form floated dozens of meters in the air, a captivating crimson shimmering around her. Diamond Woman, however, let out an inexplicable scream and plummeted from the sky above the town. Chapter 315, Nian's soul returns. Boom! A woman, seemingly made of diamond, plummeted from the sky, landing on a house, smashing a hole through the roof. The woman's shimmer faded as she returned to her human form, lying unconscious on the collapsed wooden planks. Her identity was clear, the White Queen, Emma Frost. A few dozen meters away, Ant-Man, having transformed into a giant, felt his mouth dry. He hurriedly climbed from the ground, leaving a large, butt-shaped pit in his wake. Ant-Man Scott turned and fled, returning to his normal human form, but he didn't know where to flee. The world he now found himself in, though familiar, was no longer the one he knew. Scott realized this before Ant-Man could even run 10 meters. Stump! A sharp gust of wind stirred, and a crimson figure fell from the sky to the ground directly in front of Ant-Man. Ant-Man swallowed, activated his controls, and shrank to the size of an ant. But at the same time, a crimson gust of wind descended, lifting the tiny Ant-Man and the dust from the ground into the air. Ant-Man, airborne, had no chance to fight back or escape. A white, tender hand slapped forward. Bang! With a gentle slap, a shadowy male figure was blasted from Ant-Man's ant-sized body. In less than 3 minutes, the battle was over. Scott's soul floated low in the sky, his eyes glazed, clearly stunned by the maid's 2 slaps. Just now, a single slap had sent him to another world, and now, a single slap had driven his soul out. What kind of maid is this? Clearly, a witch. The Scarlet Witch. The Scarlet Maid ignored the unconscious White Queen, Emma, and the separated Ant-Man, Scott. She waved her hand in a circle, opening a circular portal. She stepped out and vanished amidst the swirling, sparkling sparks. On the other side of the mirrored space lay the real world. Outside, the entire villa was ablaze with lights. The swirling sparks formed a portal. The Scarlet Maid appeared out of nowhere in the second-floor living room of the villa. Besides her, a tall, white-haired figure stood on the living room balcony. A small, orange cat swayed its tail on the ground nearby. Wanda's jewel-like eyes held a hint of coldness. She bowed slightly, speaking with a certain respect. Miss Diana. Everything has been resolved. The other party's identity is. I understand everything. Wonder Woman, her white hair flowing in the night breeze, asked directly, is he alright? No. Wanda clenched her fists, her eyes gleaming a faint red, a destructive and cold aura emanating from her. It's just what? The young master's room is messed up. Then please clean it again tonight, Wonder Woman said. She approached the vibranium cabinet door and whispered, Alice, open the door. As soon as she finished speaking, the vibranium cabinet door slowly opened on its own, without a sound. Wonder Woman's artifacts and battlesuit transformed, returning to casual home clothes. Only her loose, shaggy hair retained its frosty white. She entered the room. The white-haired demigod sat down beside the bed. She gently held the boy's hand, and as she gazed at his seemingly slumbering face, tenderness flickered in her dark eyes. Diana opened her mouth, then paused, ultimately remaining silent. She sat there, watching, the quiet room becoming even more peaceful. There's so much I want to say to you. So I won't, but you'll understand. Diana walked out of the boy's room. Miss Diana, I'm sorry, Wanda said, bowing her head from the doorway. I wasn't keeping an eye on the house, and someone broke in. It won't happen again, I promise. At the end, the girl's eyes glowed faintly. It's not your fault. I was also negligent. Diana stared at Wanda, thought for a moment, and then said softly, those who invaded here tonight didn't really have any ill intentions. They just wanted to confirm the situation and avoid harming anyone. Wanda remained silent, not responding. Diana whispered, Wanda, if he knew, he wouldn't want to see you like this. Wanda nodded and said, okay, I'll let them go this time. But I won't forgive them. If I see them again. A crimson glowed in Wanda's eyes, a look filled with devastation, coldness, and madness, not typical of a girl her age. Diana sighed. This child, besides him, sometimes even she found it difficult to persuade him. But Diana understood Wanda's feelings. Back then. If it weren't for the life force still lingering in his body, a glimmer of hope for recovery, how could she have continued to stay in this human world? Keep a close eye on him, Diana said, then walked out. The office scene had just fought and still needed to be dealt with. Wanda, having changed her boots, walked into the room with a leisurely pace. In a matter of minutes, the floor of the sealed room within the vibranium cabinet was sparkling clean, even the faint scent of ants in the air had vanished. Her gaze returned to the dark-haired boy on the bed. The maid's previous coldness instantly vanished, and the light in her rosy eyes softened. The maid naturally imitated the action, raising her right hand to touch her head, gently stroking her hair, a happy smile on her face. Master, the room is clean, Wanda said with a soft smile. I've cleared away all the trash that came in here. On the other side of the universe. On an inhabited planet, atop a snowy mountain, where the wind and snow are constant year-round. Old Bone, you're so boring. Tell me some more stories. Forget it. Anyway, all you're talking about is stories about being a notorious supervillain during World War II. A young man's voice echoed through the wind and snow on the mountain top. I told you, don't call me Old Bone, another weathered voice said weakly. If I don't call you Old Bone, do you want to call me Little Red? The young man asked in surprise. The being draped in a tattered black cloak sitting atop the snowy mountain remained silent. The young man floated high in the sky, the wind and snow passing directly through his body, his form appearing and disappearing in a hazy light. Forget it, I'm going back to my nap. With these words, the black-haired young man suddenly flew down the almost 90-degree vertical cliff of the snowy mountain, sinking onto a strange stone platform at the bottom that resembled an altar, and emerged into a hot spring. Soaking in the warm water, the young man's seemingly perfect body solidified, approaching completeness. Then, a light flashed. An orange-yellow gem emerged from the warm water, swirled around the boy's body, and finally sank into his body. Chapter 316 Death Bear, Nian's assistant. Sinking. The young man, soaking in the hot springs at the bottom of the snow valley, continued to sink. His spirit, which had been elusive, almost transparent and dissipating, began to solidify. A faint warm orange light swirled through the sleeping boy's body, making his spirit visible and transparent, radiating a myriad of bright beams beneath the gloomy spring. At that moment, the entire hot spring at the bottom of the snow valley illuminated. A gurgling sound. The orange light moved towards the young man's head, like a gem set between his eyebrows, calming his soul. After a long moment, Nian slowly opened his eyes, and the orange gem instantly left his body, rapidly dissolving into the hot spring. The bottom of the hot spring returned to darkness and coldness, as if everything just now was an illusion. Nian looked at his solidified spirit and slowly exhaled, a complex look in his eyes. Yes, he was Nian. Or rather, he was his own soul. Since 3 years ago. At the moment of death, Nian's soul left his body on Earth and was inexplicably transported to the mysterious and wondrous place he is today. Normally, A soul cannot remain without its body for too long, or, like Wanda, who had lost her soul, both soul and body would perish. However, Nian's soul has been absent for 3 full years, yet miraculously survives to this day. This is all thanks to this very place. Gurgling, Nian's soul rises from the bottom of the hot spring, gazing at the shimmering orange waters around him. This is the location of the soul gem, one of the 6 infinity stones. His soul must rest here each day, nourished by the soul gem's power, briefly returning to its most perfect state, preventing it from dissipating or being drawn elsewhere. This is a necessary evil. Looking down, Nian's soul can faintly discern a black mist lingering above it. The black mist, like chains, constantly shifts, tightly binding the young man's soul. The mark of death remains. This was the main reason why Nian's soul couldn't return to his body on Earth. Even Nian's soul was confused about his current situation. His body was clearly dead, but his soul was still alive, having survived 3 long years with the help of the soul gem. Yes, 3 years was a long time for Nian. He wondered what had become of his aunt, Wanda, Gwen, Kara, the boss. I really want to go back. Nian's soul muttered to itself, his eyes quickly turning determined. He had to find a way to undo the mark of death on his soul. Once that was done, his soul could return to his body on Earth. Of course, that presumably meant his body on Earth remained intact. Nian's soul emerged from the hot spring, revealing a dark figure leaning against the stone altar. It was a gothic woman wearing a black tank top and jeans, carrying a black umbrella. A cross hung from her perfectly pale neck, an eyeliner shaped like a musical note was applied to the corner of her right eye. Sister, you're here, Nian's soul greeted with a familiar wave. The gothic woman nodded and said calmly, let's go. Okay, where are we going to work today? Nian's soul floated toward the gothic woman. She didn't respond, but gestured to the stuffed bear she held in her right hand. Okay. Nian's soul sighed, then, using his hands as megaphones, shouted upward, Zio Hong, I'm going out to work. You stay home and be a good boy. I'll see you tonight. With that, Nian's soul flew forward, immersing itself in the stuffed bear held by the gothic woman. The next moment, the gothic woman, clutching the stuffed bear, vanished from the scene. Only the boy's voice remained, echoing faintly among the snow-capped mountains. Atop the peak, a mysterious figure, draped in a black cloak, sat cross-legged in the snow, remaining silent. A gust of wind, shrouded in frost and snow, lifted the black hood, revealing a red skull devoid of hair and skin. A gothic woman, clutching a black umbrella in one hand and a stuffed bear in the other, appeared in a bustling square. Where is this? The stuffed bear's eye Nian possessed widened its eyes in surprise, watching the passers-by around them, some with wings, some with horns, some with blue skin. They looked like aliens. Beside the square, imposing alien skyscrapers rose from the ground, and from time to time, highly technological alien spaceships could be seen zipping through the air. This is Nova, a prosperous civilization in the galaxy, the gothic woman whispered. The alien passers-by in the square didn't even notice her arrival. As for her attire, Nova, one of the most commercially advanced civilizations in the galaxy, seeing alien merchants and workers every day was nothing new. The galaxy's major civilizations and races converged here. Just as the gothic woman, clutching her stuffed bear, walked towards a section of the square. Also in Nova's alien square, not far away, a special detachment, composed of a man in a jacket, a green-skinned woman, an armed raccoon, and a bald, burly man, dressed like space pirates, hurried past a gothic woman. On the other side of the square, a blonde woman in a blue spacesuit, holding a ginger cat, suddenly turned, her beautiful eyes casting a startled glance at the gothic woman's stuffed bear. A brilliant glint flashed in her eyes, before she quickly withdrew her gaze and walked away from the alien square. The gothic woman ignored everyone, clutching the stuffed bear, and reached the edge of the square, where she saw an alien girl with a broken wing, sitting haggard on the ground. So, was she dying? A sudden realization dawned on Nian, a flicker of regret in his eyes. Hello, the gothic woman knelt gently on the ground and offered a greeting. The alien girl looked up blankly, instinctively moving back in fear. Would you like to hold my bear? The gothic woman smiled faintly and raised the stuffed bear. Looking at the furry, adorable little bear doll with an eye patch, patches all over its body, and its tongue hanging out, the alien girl's eyes lit up, and she asked with a trembling voice, Can I? You can hold it, but only for a moment, because it's my assistant, the gothic woman said with a serious smile. She got permission. The alien girl immediately hugged the little bear doll, rubbing her cheek against it, like the pain of a broken wing and the coldness of sitting on the street, finding a tiny bit of warmth and comfort in this brief moment. Nian. What kind of assistant is this? Nian sighed inwardly, but the little bear doll's hand quietly moved, gently hugging the little girl's thin body. Death, sometimes, is not such a cold thing. Chapter 317 The Beginning of Civil and Foreign Wars on Earth. Saturday morning. At the entrance to a villa outside Washington. Good morning, Miss Diana. Wanda, long time no see. Not even a week. Gwen and Kara, carrying their belongings, arrived at the villa's door and greeted gently. Come in, Diana, the hostess in her home clothes, said softly. Please change your shoes, both of you. Wanda, dressed in a maid's dress, bowed politely, took the belongings, and placed 2 pairs of slippers on the carpet. Gwen and Kara changed into the slippers and walked naturally into the villa. They had been here countless times, in some ways more familiar than their own home. Of course, in front of Diana, they were still very attentive to etiquette and appearance. Wanda turned to prepare drinks. She knew everyone's tastes without even asking. Gwen and Kara sat down on the sofa, chatting with Diana about family matters and current events. Louise is pregnant. Kara, excited, was the first to announce the good news. I heard about it, Diana nodded with a smile. Gwen asked in surprise, Miss Lois, is she Kara's cousin, Mr. Superman's wife? Yes, I'm going to have a nephew soon. My Kryptonian family will finally have a descendant. Kara clenched her fists, overjoyed. Tomorrow, there's a celebration party. Miss Diana, come too. Okay, Diana nodded with a smile. After chatting for a while, Diana seemed to remember something. Looking at Gwen and Kara, she said, I've heard about what's going on in the Alliance lately. Kara's smile immediately faded, a solemn expression forming. Gwen also lowered her head, her thoughts unclear. Gwen, you've always been so steady. Tell me what you think first, Diana said softly. Her elegant and gentle voice always brought a sense of comfort and calm. Gwen said with a hint of resignation, right now, within the Avengers, some agree to that agreement, while others refuse. In recent years, the extraordinary has had a tremendous impact on the world. The damage caused by superheroes' mistakes or various other reasons has exacerbated the conflict between the extraordinary and ordinary people. Governments around the world believe it's necessary to control the superheroes' abilities and actions. So, over 200 national leaders jointly signed a special agreement targeting heroes. It was called Hero Restricted. This meant that any superhero action could only be carried out with the approval of the United Nations, otherwise, it would be considered illegal. This extraordinary agreement initially targeted the Avengers, followed by the Justice League and the Fantastic Four. Mr. Stark agrees to sign the agreement, but Mr. Rogers firmly refuses. Everything is still under discussion. Gwen exhaled softly. So, are you going to sign or not? Diana asked curiously. Gwen smiled and replied, I'm going to quit the Avengers. Gwen, what are you doing? Kara's eyes widened in surprise. Gwen smoothed her hair from her ear. Actually, I've never been an official Avengers member. I've only been an intern. Now that 3 years have passed, I think it's time to leave. Diana asked, so, if you encounter another extraordinary event, what will you do? Of course, I'll definitely intervene, Gwen smiled brightly. Because that's who I am, and that's how he sees me. Good girl. Diana gently squeezed Gwen's hand, then looked at Kara. Kara, what about you? I understand the Justice League is planning. Now, in Gotham City, at the Justice League headquarters. In a basement the size of a football field, the Kryptonian fighter jets once used in Metropolis have been relocated here, occupying most of it. The fighter jet's streamlined fuselages contrast with a cold, metallic sheen, resembling a space beast on the verge of resurgence, eager to return to the boundless brilliance of deep space. The damage has been repaired. In 3 days, after testing is complete, we'll be ready to officially take off. Standing at the front of the Kryptonian fighter, the highly mechanized cyborg, his electronic left eye flashing red, said, after 1,000 jumps in a month, we should be able to reach that location. Should? I want an exact probability. Bruce Wayne, draped in a black trench coat, sat beside him, hands in his pockets and pursed his lips. Cyborg pondered for a moment, Then said confidently, in 2 months at most, we'll definitely reach that location. My knowledge of Apocalypse is absolutely certain of this. Bruce Wayne's deep eyes gleamed coldly, and he pulled his hands from his pockets. He said solemnly, all right. In 3 days, we'll assemble and depart. Who's going on the expedition? Cyborg asked. Bruce Wayne replied, you and me, Superman, the Flash, Martian Manhunter, Zatanna, Aquaman, and... In a villa outside Washington. Kara said firmly, I'll go with him and fight. Silence fell in the first-floor living room until the sound of Wanda placing her cup on the table. Everyone knew it. This would be an extremely difficult and dangerous battle. Perhaps a battle from which there would be no return. The distance from Earth to Apocalypse alone was so vast it instilled despair. To dare to go there required immense fortitude. This would also be the most distant and difficult supernatural war in the history of humanity on Earth. My cousin hasn't even had a son yet, and he's going. How could I not go? Kara stuck out her tongue, a cheerful laugh dispelling the heavy atmosphere. Diana's eyes were filled with apology and guilt. She whispered, I'm sorry, Kara. Kara shook her head, gazing at Diana, and said sincerely, Miss Diana, you don't have to apologize. Just keep an eye on Senior for me. I'm relieved to have you by his side. Kara. Gwen also shook Kara's hand, a look of concern on her face. Don't worry about me, Kara said with a determined smile. In 2 or 3 months at most, we'll definitely be back. We all have our reasons for coming back. Miss Diana, please let me see Senior, Kara said finally. Wanda, take her. Diana agreed without hesitation, then turned to Gwen beside her. Gwen, you should come too. You want to see him, right? Gwen remained seated on the sofa, patiently watching Kara's back. Let Kara see him first. She must have a lot to say, alone. On the second floor of the villa, behind the vibranium door, inside a room. Kara happily entered, her dark gold hair and skirt swaying. Senior, I'm here to see you again. Kara sat on the edge of the bed, unable to resist lowering herself from the uniform she wore, and gently resting her head on the chest of the young man, who seemed to be soundly asleep. I hope this isn't the last time. Kara's eyes dimmed, her young, delicate face filled with loss. She muttered to herself, I'm so sorry. I couldn't have your child back then. If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 318 Nian is the key. Where is this? A woman with long, beautiful, snow-white hair reaching her waist, dressed in a tight black leather jacket that accentuated her voluptuous figure, her chest framing a half snow-white curve. Her black ears twitched, and her slender tail swayed gently. Felicia Hardy, the black cat, rose from the grass, which resembled a green blanket, and gazed blankly around. Above her was a strange, dark red night sky, a faint sense of unreality. Surrounding her were ordinary meadows and trees, nothing special, yet permeated with mystery. Oh, I remember being eaten by that cat. Felicia stood up from the grass, her dizzy mind gradually clearing as she recalled the events before her coma. The final scene. It was frozen in time as the black kitten, now a cat, opened its bloody mouth wide, swallowing her whole into the black hole within. She had thought herself dead, but to her surprise, could it be that she was already dead? Was this the so-called hell or the underworld? Felicia, the black cat, took a few deep breaths. Her ears suddenly perked up as she heard a strange sound. It came from the other side of the hill. Felicia immediately took off towards the highest hill in the area. Her hands and feet, her hair flying back, her human-like black cat body swooped down from the sky, carrying the wind with her as she ran faster and faster. Soon, Felicia reached the top of a hill and easily leaped onto the trunk of a large tree, 7 or 8 meters above the ground. She slowly stood up, holding onto the tree. Felicia's pupils suddenly constricted, and she was stunned. Across the hill, a city lay. At first glance, it was more prosperous than even the most developed metropolitan cities like Washington, D.C., and Metropolis. Inside, strange and unprecedented buildings rose from the ground, their whole structure subtly contrasting with the smooth arcs of glass and metal. And next to this building, resembling a post-human civilization, stood another strange city, completely different from human civilization. Within, The lights of a cyberpunk civilization shone with dazzling brilliance. There weren't just these two cities. Felicia saw that even further ahead of the hill, to its left and right, and even behind it, were also vast, fully civilized cities. Each city's architectural style and appearance were distinct. They stood side by side, as if they were from different alien civilizations. Felicia also saw that some of these alien cities were home to mysterious life forms. Inside the cat's mouth, there was actually such a world. Felicia was lost in thought when she suddenly saw a smooth-sided mountain rising into the night sky from the center of the cities. Felicia looked up, her rosy lips opening ever wider. It wasn't a mountain. It was clearly a stone statue, but so large that a single foot was the height of an alien city, making it difficult to see its entirety. Felicia stared at the statue, tens of thousands of meters tall, its upper body almost protruding from the outer space. It resembled the outline of a young man. It's him. Felicia's pupils trembled, and a strange emotion brewed within her. Gotham City, Batcave. Batman Bruce Wayne gazed at the array of batsuits displayed in the room, finally settling into a chair beside a workbench covered in weapons and equipment. The day after tomorrow, they'd set off for the battle on Apocalypse. Bruce Wayne's deep eyes held a complex thought. This operation, like the previous one, resurrecting Superman, he wasn't sure his path was right, but it was the one he felt most strongly about. For the past few years, he'd been dreaming the same nightmare almost every night, a tragic nightmare of Earth's fall, the world's fall, the deaths of countless heroes and humanity. And according to Cyborg, Apocalypse would never abandon Earth and would surely return. Rather than continue to wait, following the trajectory of his nightmare, it was better to take the initiative. Batman Bruce Wayne and Superman Clark had the same idea on this point. Thus, they'd been preparing for this very moment for 3 years. What are our chances of success? Bruce Wayne suddenly asked. His deep, steady voice echoed through the underground Batcave, where only Batman was present. In my opinion, less than half. A spiritual thought inexplicably echoed. The key to conquering Apocalypse lies in its ruler, Darkseid. You are strong enough, but I don't know how truly powerful he is. His existence is a nightmare for countless civilizations. On the workbench in the Batcave, a glass jar held a colorful starfish. A hint of nostalgia and reminiscence crossed the starfish's single eye. A pity, if you were still alive. Bruce Wayne naturally knew who Jar Luo was referring to. He recalled the other Flash he had seen there when Superman was resurrected 3 years ago. That Flash had said to him, "Nian is the key. Nian Prince is the key." The voice was filled with urgency and anticipation. Bruce Wayne shook his head, dismissing the thought. His eyes were deep, and he said calmly, "Now, we have to rely on ourselves." At this time, on the other side of the universe. I'm back again, Little Red. A stuffed bear appeared out of thin air on the top of a snowy mountain, and from the stuffed bear emerged the soul of a black-haired boy. The young soul greeted the tall being still sitting on the snow. The tall being revealed a terrifying red skull face. If Captain America were present, he would definitely recognize him immediately. Isn't the other party the leader who created Hydra, Red Skull Schmidt? The Red Skull, wearing a tattered black robe, looked at the boy's soul expressionlessly and said hoarsely, "Are you going to take the Soul Stone or not? I am the guardian of the Soul Stone. If you want to take the Soul Stone, you must sacrifice the person you love most." The Red Skull's words were not finished yet. The Nian spirit interrupted him. All right, stop reciting lines, you're like a game NPC. He floated in the air, spreading his hands and saying, "I'm already dead. Only my soul remains, even more miserable than you. What else can I sacrifice? Besides, isn't it better to get something for free?" The Nian spirit chuckled and continued its flight down the valley. "I'm tired. I'm going to sleep. We'll talk later." He watched the shadowy figure of the young man descend toward the altar stone platform below. Red Skull clenched his staff, veins bulging on his forehead. In all his years as the guardian of the Soul Gem, he'd never seen anyone so shameless. It would be fine if this guy didn't take the Soul Gem, but he's been coming every day for 3 years to get it for free. Worse still, he couldn't do anything to him. Being a guardian is truly unbearable. Someone, come and sacrifice and take the Soul Gem. I can't hold it any longer. Red Skull roared inwardly. Chapter 319, Expedition to Apocalypse Star, Father's Kindness and Son's Filial Piety. On the outskirts of Metropolis, in a 2-story wooden house surrounded by wheat fields. Lois, Martha, I'll be back soon. Clark, dressed in the Kryptonian diplomatic uniform of a blue and red cape, looked at his wife and adoptive mother. When the child is born, let's call him Jonathan. Superman's eyes fell on Lois's swollen belly. He placed his broad hand on it, gently caressing it, and said gently. Lois stared at him firmly and said, "We'll name him when you get back. Be safe." Martha patted his shoulder. "Okay," Superman nodded solemnly. Gotham City, Batcave. "Master," the white-haired old butler said gravely. Bruce Wayne, dressed in his full black batsuit, held a glass jar containing a starfish in his right hand. Batman said nothing, simply nodded at the old butler, his chin set in a resolute, strong jaw. "Alfred, we'll succeed, we will." Washington, D.C., local prison. "I'm just on a business trip. I'll probably be back in a month or two. Don't worry." Barry Allen, the Flash, spoke to his handcuffed father in prison through a glass window, holding the phone. Gotham City, a magic show. The door was closed, a temporarily closed sign hung above it. Pulling a baseball cap over her black hair, Zatanna left alone, dragging her suitcase. Justice League headquarters. An alien spaceship, like a giant steel beast, sat in the open space outside. It was an overcast day, with no sunlight. In the open space in front of the Kryptonian spaceship, a highly mechanized black man and a large man carrying a bottle of wine were already standing there waiting. "Aren't you going to talk to your family?" Aquaman asked. "I don't have any family anymore," Cyborg replied. "Aquaman, sorry." Cyborg shook his head nonchalantly and looked at Aquaman. "What about you?" Aquaman shrugged and said, "I told my mother." Snap! A blue cape fluttered as a tall, green-skinned man descended from the sky in front of Aquaman and Cyborg. Martian Manhunter, one of the Justice League's strongest fighters. Outside Washington, in a wooden farmhouse similar to Superman's, Kara, also wearing a blue cape with red accents and the Kryptonian diplomatic attire, bid farewell to her adoptive parents at the door. The sunlight shimmered on her body. Supergirl Kara looked back and saw a young woman in a black and white Spider-Man suit approaching the cabin. "I'll see you off," Gwen whispered. "Okay." Kara smiled brightly. It was noon. Diana stood atop a commercial building, covering her white hair as she looked up. She could vaguely make out the shadow of a spaceship passing high in the distance. In the blink of an eye, the ship vanished, leaving no trace, hurtling into the vast universe beyond. At this moment, the agreement was a global debate, and the Avengers were engaged in a civil war. The current members of the Justice League quietly and fully armed themselves, embarking on an interstellar journey lasting over a month, facing one of the most powerful beings in the universe. On the other side of the universe, Nian's soul awoke once again at the altar at the bottom of the Snow Valley. He watched as his free soul gem vanished once more into the hot springs, and a black mist like chains lingered around him. He sighed helplessly. 3 years, over 1,000 times. Each time he used the soul gem to cleanse and nourish his soul, Nian tried to break free from the death mark. But each time, he failed. He only felt that over the past 3 years, the death mark had dissipated by about a quarter, and breaking free or eliminating it was becoming increasingly difficult. At least 10 years would be needed before there was any chance of breaking free, and that was assuming he had to use the soul gem daily. Otherwise, his soul would have been gone long ago. "No matter what, I must return." Nian's soul, with a determined gaze, emerged from the altar hot springs. Beside the hot springs, a familiar black figure stood, waiting for him as always. His mind drifted away. 3 years ago, after Nian's soul was inexplicably transported to his current location, no one knew of his presence except the Gothic woman before him, not even the death that had branded him. After meeting the Gothic woman for the second time, she said, "Brother, would you like to be my intern assistant?" Nian's soul agreed. And so, every day for 3 years, the Gothic woman would come pick him up and return him at night. Over the course of 3 years, Nian's soul had followed the Gothic woman to thousands of different civilizations across the universe, encountering a variety of alien races far more complex and diverse than Guan Luo had initially described. And today was no exception. Nian's soul was about to resign itself to its fate and fly into the stuffed bear, but this time, he was stunned. The Gothic woman wasn't holding the stuffed bear. "Today, just follow me," the Gothic woman whispered. She blinked, and she and Nian's soul, holding a black umbrella, vanished from their original location. Nian's soul felt a flash before its vision shifted to the interior of an unknown temple. A Gothic woman stood beside him, holding an umbrella. This is. The Nian's soul was about to speak when he heard the frantic voice of a middle-aged man from the front of the hall. Star-Lord, the woman with you, all creatures in this world, everything is temporary, only we are eternal. Because you and I are both gods, the only remaining gods in the world. The Nian's soul saw deep within the hall where he was. A middle-aged man with white hair was talking to a young man named Star-Lord, dressed as an interstellar pirate. I tried to realize the ultimate meaning of life, to reproduce and thrive. But then I realized it. Only I am unique. Everything else is merely nourishment for our growth. For example, I once saw your mother and felt that humans were too fragile, so I planted a tumor in her brain. Hearing this, the Nian's soul felt that this man was both disgusting and familiar, as if he had seen him somewhere before. Star-Lord was horrified upon hearing this, staring at the middle-aged man in disbelief. You killed my mother. She was human, after all, unlike you and me. Before the middle-aged man could finish his words, Star-Lord, furious, unsheathed his twin energy rifles and blasted him to pieces. However, the middle-aged man didn't fall, nor did he bleed. Zzz. The other man's body, shaped like blue energy, twisted back into human form. He coldly said, Son, you don't understand me. I don't have a father like you, an inhuman monster. Star-Lord cried out in disgust. Nian's soul finally understood. Wasn't this a grand display of fatherly love and filial piety? Chapter 320, Resurrection of Nian. Happy New Year. Inside the mysterious hall, a being shaped like a middle-aged man, formed from blue energy, confronted the enraged Star-Lord. Through their conversation, Nian's soul had come to understand. This middle-aged man, claiming to be a celestial, had once visited Earth and fused with a local female human, giving birth to the current celestial descendant, Star-Lord. Wait, isn't that? Nian's soul narrowed its eyes, as if remembering something. At that moment, the being, once again woven from blue energy into the middle-aged man's incarnation, suddenly glanced outside the hallway, noticing the Gothic woman and the young soul standing in the hallway. This was why neither the Gothic woman nor the young soul had concealed themselves. Its gaze first fell on the young soul. The celestial god Ego, oblivious to his son, Star-Lord, who had fallen out with him, shouted in shock and fury, It's you. The Nian's soul, floating low in the palace's sky, shrank back and quickly said, You've got the wrong person. How could I possibly be wrong? 3 years ago, you dug out one of my clones, devoured a large portion of my original energy, and then you demanded I return to Earth. Ego's eyes were filled with anger and indifference. Well, since you've recognized me, there's nothing I can do. The Nian's soul spread his hands. Indeed, this person was one of the masterminds whose seed clone he had dug out and trampled upon in super mode 3 years ago. Under Ego's furious gaze, the Nian's soul, undaunted, quickly hid behind the Gothic woman. Come here if you dare. The Nian's soul, fearless, rested on the Gothic woman's shoulder. The Gothic woman remained expressionless, standing there, neither joy nor fear. As if nothing had anything to do with her, like a completely objective witness. The god Ego frowned slightly, his gaze finally settling on the Gothic woman. Having sensed no energy from her, he hadn't even glanced at her. But upon seeing her face and the silver cross around her neck, Ego's pupils trembled violently, like an earthquake. His shaped body barely managed to maintain its human form. It's you. Ego's face held a frenzy, but even more so, a fear that ingrained itself in his soul. Nian's soul was astonished that the other man actually knew the Gothic woman. Ego retreated, his body trembling. In his childhood, he had once seen the Gothic woman from afar. That night, the last adult god he knew died. Later, Ego vaguely guessed her identity, and to this day, he has been haunted by fear, studying life, striving to achieve the ultimate eternity. You're here to witness the others, right? It can't be me, it absolutely can't be me. How could I possibly be here today? Ego, the celestial god, felt his heart shatter. He suddenly waved his hand forward, and a massive stream of energy surged from the temple's floor, transforming into a spear of energy that instantly pierced Star-Lord's chest, lifting his body high into the air. It's my son who's going to die. It can't be me. After absorbing his energy, I could devour thousands of planets and achieve eternity. Ego screamed frantically. A second later, Accompanied by a loud boom, an interstellar pirate fighter crashed into the temple's hall, smashing Ego's energy avatar to pieces and saving Star-Lord, the half-god who had nearly been absorbed. Rumble. The massive energy stream, like a giant tentacle, reached out to the fighter, and the vast temple collapsed. The battle between the interstellar pirates and Ego, the celestial god, was imminent. The Gothic woman and the young man's souls had already vanished from the battlefield. The planet Ego itself, 10,000 meters above, near the edge of the universe. A Gothic woman holding an umbrella and a young boy's soul floated here, gazing down at the crumbling head planet below. Any thoughts? The Gothic woman glanced at the young boy's soul and asked. Death is truly terrifying. Even the so-called gods of the universe can't avoid it, living their entire lives in the fear of pursuing eternity. Nian sighed, then quickly stopped. He recalled the dying people he had met before, like the little girl with broken wings, and muttered to himself, no, death can sometimes be something beautiful and heartwarming. Death is the fate of all things, the law of the universe, the final destination. Girls, you like teddy bears, ahem, forget I said that last one. Nian's soul found that it no longer resisted death, but was able to face it with a more peaceful attitude. This death, of course, wasn't the death of the self-proclaimed creator god. Rather, it was the death that followed the laws of death, the death that every life must face. Thinking of this, Nian's soul found that it no longer resisted death, but was able to face it with a more peaceful attitude. This death, of course, wasn't the death of the self-proclaimed creator god. Rather, it was the death that followed the laws of death, the death that every life must face. Nian's soul calmly gazed at the black mist lingering around his body. Under his gaze, the imprint of the law of death, like shackles that had imprisoned him for 3 years, gradually dissipated and melted, seemingly merging with his soul. Sister, you saved me. Nian's soul suppressed his excitement and looked at the Gothic woman beside him, his eyes filled with gratitude. I can't kill, nor can I save anyone. The Gothic woman shook her head gently. I simply found you and guided you. It was your ability that saved you from being wiped out by the law of death. But I still want to thank you. Without you, I wouldn't have made it this far, Nian's soul said sincerely. Then, will you be my true assistant? The Gothic woman looked at Nian's soul and said, now that you've officially graduated from your internship, you're barely qualified to be my assistant. Thank you for giving me this opportunity. I know it must be rare. Nian's soul clenched its fists and said sincerely, but I still want to go back to Earth. He had waited for this day for so long. Every day, he thought about going back. Is that so? Then let it be. The Gothic woman nodded, as if she was resigned to fate, unconcerned. Whether Nian stayed or not made no difference to her. Sister, will I ever see you again? Nian's soul couldn't help but ask. You don't want to see me again? The Gothic woman shook her head gently, holding her black umbrella, and turned and disappeared into the air. At least, I won't forget you. Nian's soul watched the Gothic woman's back as she left, watched the skull planet below burst into brilliant flames like fireworks, watched countless lives meet their end. And he, on the other side of the universe, would embark on a path of reversal. On the other side of the universe. The young man's shadow appeared once again on the peak of the snowy mountain. The red skull, sitting atop the peak, had grown accustomed to it and ignored it, preparing to hold his breath to stifle its nagging. Unexpectedly, this time Nian's soul smiled at him and said, Old Bone, Little Red, I'm here to say goodbye. This time, perhaps for the last time. Huh? The red skull's eyes widened, almost doubting he had misheard. In the suburbs of Washington, in a villa. A room on the second floor. Diana, wearing a long dress, sat on the edge of the bed. She leaned over gently and kissed the forehead of the boy who seemed to be in a dream. She sat in silence for a while. Diana's eyes were gentle, and she gently smoothed the quilt covering the boy. Then, she got up and left the room. Behind her, the vibranium door closed automatically. Came to the first floor. Wanda, I'm going to work. The company has an event tonight, so I will be back late. Diana said softly. Okay, I will look after the young master at home. Wanda, dressed as a maid, bowed slightly and replied politely. Then I'll leave it to you. Diana put on her high heels, opened the door and left the villa. No one noticed. At this time, in the vibranium cabinet, on the neck of the black-haired boy lying on the bed, under the quilt and shirt, the silver necklace pendant was glowing with a faint blue light. This is an update added by the monthly ticket, written on New Year's Eve. I hope that in the new year, we and the protagonist will continue to set sail. CAC. Chapter 321 Resurrected Master, Welcome Home. In Washington, a bustling downtown area near a high school, people were commuting to and from get off work as usual. Then, as if noticing something, some pedestrians paused, staring blankly at a specific spot. They saw the flower shop with a closed sign, closed for 3 years. The door was covered in dust and cobwebs, a shop abandoned by the city. In the rays of the setting sun, the withered vines hanging from the storefront suddenly sprouted fresh green buds. The vines that had withered and died overnight 3 years ago suddenly came to life today. Strange. On the other side of the universe. Whoosh! Atop a snowy mountain, the wind and snow continued. A tattered black cloak fluttered in the cold wind. The Red Skull, transported here by the Cosmic Cube since World War II to become the guardian of the Soul Gem, sat atop the snowy mountain, staff in hand, as always. Red Skull looked up at the snow-drenched sky, then gazed down at the silent altar valley below. A moment of daze crossed his terrifying skull face. 3 years later, it was as if I'd gotten used to that voice. Suddenly, that kid left. It's a bit strange. It's definitely not loneliness or anything like that. Red Skull shook his head, dismissing his scattered thoughts. He glanced to the side and found that the stuffed bear he had placed there was gone, leaving only a shallow dent in the snow. Startled, Red Skull turned back. Not far from the peak of the snowy mountain, a gothic woman could be seen, holding a small black umbrella in her left hand and the stuffed bear in her right. The bear swayed back and forth with her arm, quickly disappearing into the snow with each step. Nightfall. Washington, a suburban villa. On the second floor, the door to the vibranium cabinet opened. A crimson-haired girl in a maid's dress entered the room. Wanda neatly folded the laundry, placing it one by one in the closet, the scent of laundry detergent lingering. Then, the girl began wiping the table and chairs, then sweeping and mopping the floor. The already clean room was completely refreshed, without a speck of dust. Wanda thoroughly enjoyed the process. After finishing all the tedious chores, she looked at the boy lying on the bed, and a smile of pleasure naturally curled up at the corners of her mouth. "Good night, Master," Wanda whispered softly. She was about to leave the room, but suddenly stopped. Looking back at the boy's dark-haired brow, Wanda clenched her right hand into a fist and covered her chest. The fingers of her left lightly touched her lips, and she instinctively took a step towards the bed. She braced her hands on the bed and leaned forward slightly, her crimson hair flowing down and gently resting on the boy's neck. When her noses almost touched, Wanda's movement to lean closer stopped abruptly. Her face pale, and she quickly stood up and moved away from the boy's body, startled. As a maid, doing such a thing while the mistress was away was truly dereliction of duty. "Yes, I just missed the young master so much, that's not it." Wanda's eyes flushed slightly as she turned towards the door. And the moment she turned, a blue light pierced through his shirt and quilt, emerging, and a blue mist quietly enveloped the young man's body. Wanda was approaching the door to the vibranium cabinet when she suddenly heard the sound of the quilt being pulled back from behind her, unoccupied. In the room, which had been silent for 3 years, there was a sound. How could this be possible? Wanda shuddered, her heart skipping a beat. The Scarlet Maid turned around in shock, only to see the young man half sitting up in bed, rubbing his sleepy eyes and stretching his stiff waist. Just like 3 years ago. Wanda's jewel-like eyes widened, her pupils reflecting the moving black-haired boy. For a moment, she wondered if she was dreaming. After all, she had had this dream so many times. "Wanda. I'm so hungry. Can I have something to eat?" the dark-haired boy muttered, yawning as he sat up in bed. Wanda was silent for a moment, then suddenly trotted forward, her lace headscarf falling in mid-air as her petite body flung itself into the boy's arms. She looked nothing like the powerful, domineering maid she had faced the invaders a few days ago. Instead, she resembled a fragile little girl rescued from the ruins of New York. The Scarlet Maid, unable to contain herself, buried her face in the boy's arms and sobbed, her tiny hands clutching the boy's clothes tightly, as if unwilling to let go. "Okay, I'm fine." Nian's pale face faded, revealing a bright smile. One hand embraced the delicate, doll-like body, the other naturally ruffling her soft, silky hair. This was a long-lost feeling. 3 years of staring at Red Skull's bald head almost every day, making her feel suffocated. As for his sister, he couldn't touch her. Nian truly felt the resurrection of his own life. It felt so good to be home. He let out a long breath. Woo. Master, you rascal. You said you wouldn't leave me. Wanda sobbed. My bad. From now on, I'll never leave you again, I promise. Nian hugged Wanda tightly. He was suddenly stunned. He looked down at Wanda in his arms, repeatedly checking her body. Wanda, why haven't you grown up? It was understandable that he, a corpse for 3 years, hadn't changed at all. But Wanda, the Crimson Maid, hadn't changed at all either. Her delicate, childlike face, her petite figure, even her waist-length crimson hair, they were exactly the same as they were 3 years ago. I don't know. Wanda raised her tearful face and bit her lip. 3 years ago, my body stopped growing. Wanda's words were like the thread that launched something. Nian's brain suddenly ached, and he gasped. Because his body had retained its functions, his spider senses constantly collected information from the outside world. It was like an account that had been offline for 3 years and had finally logged back in, flooding his brain with information. So much information, so vast and detailed. Fortunately, Nian's soul had been constantly tempered and nourished over the past 3 years, making his spirit much more stable. Anyone else would have probably collapsed. Young master, are you okay? Wanda noticed Nian's abnormality and asked hurriedly. I'm fine. Nian clutched his forehead, slowly regaining consciousness, his expression filled with complexity. So much had happened in the 3 years since his death. Besides, if only he could have been resurrected 2 days earlier. Now some things were too late. He could only deal with and make amends one by one. At this moment, the most urgent thing was, Wanda, my aunt. Nian began. Wanda understood his thoughts, wiped the tears from her face, and quickly replied, Miss Diana, there's a company dinner tonight, so I won't be back until later. Nian immediately stood up, his bare feet slamming directly onto the floor. Wanda, I need to change and go out, Nian said with a smile. Now. Yes, now. Okay, I'll get ready. Wanda nodded quickly. Alice. Nian looked at the phone on the bedside table. The phone suddenly lit up white, and a pleasant, intelligent female voice rang out, Master, welcome back. I went to the dinner party, so I'll just take a day off. It's a bad habit on the 1st of every month. I'll post 3 chapters tomorrow, the 2nd, just to make up for it. Chapter 322 A Date 3 years late. At night, inside a bar in downtown Washington, D.C., passionate and dynamic DJ music filled the hall. Amidst the vibrant lights and revelry, men and women danced together, seemingly casting aside the day's worries. Over 20 people gathered at the 2 or 3 reserved tables. The men were dressed as gentlemen, the women in vibrant dresses, their faces brimming with relaxed and joyful smiles. It's been ages since we've had a company dinner. Who picked the place this time? It's really nice. Some young men glanced at the bare-chested women. The women welcomed the admiring gazes. Daily life at the law firm is so boring. It's so rare to be together, so we must relax and have some fun. Where's Ms. Diana? Is she really coming? Ms. Diana. As they sat down and chatted, both men and women became interested, their eyes fixed on one person. She'll come. Ms. Diana told me, the young assistant, dressed in a stylish long dress, replied confidently. She'll really come. Many employees were skeptical. To them, Diana, their longtime colleague, held a profound mystery. It was as if once Diana left the office after get-off work, she was never seen again, as if she had vanished. Furthermore, in years, Diana hadn't attended a single company gathering or event. Their knowledge of her was limited to her work life, a perfectly composed one. Just as the group was thinking this, a familiar, pleasant, and calm voice called out from the side, Are you all here? Everyone instinctively looked in the direction of the voice, startled, their eyes filled with wonder. Standing there was a tall, beautiful figure. The woman's black hair was tied up in a bun, revealing her flawless face. A faint smile curled the corners of her mouth. Wasn't it Diana, my longtime colleague? But now, instead of her usual business attire, she wore a stylish, fitted white corseted dress. Just above her shoulders, she revealed her delicate collarbone, while the fine fabric hugged her rounded hips. The slit below her knees revealed a hint of her beautiful legs. She stepped down in a pair of white high heels. From head to toe, she was beautiful, yet elegant and graceful. Diana, already stunning in her business attire, was now even more stunning and sexy in the figure-hugging white dress, like the bright moon surrounded by numerous stars in the night sky. Diana said softly, "Please order your food. I'll pay tonight. Remember, don't get drunk. You can take a taxi back later, the company will reimburse you." "Okay, Miss Diana," the group responded immediately, instinctively captivated by her tall figure and her aura. Diana took a seat in the corner next to the young female assistant, her beautiful eyes calmly gazing at her colleagues. No one knew. Today was her last day at this prestigious law firm. After the commotion caused by the last visit from the leopard woman, and after having worked there for several years, with her appearance remaining virtually unchanged, it seemed time for a fresh start. This was why Diana had agreed to attend this gathering. "Sure enough, I still want to go home." After sitting for a while, Diana sipped her red wine and muttered to herself. "Miss Diana, what did you say?" The young female assistant, her cheeks flushed from drinking, asked curiously. "Nothing, just be careful not to drink too much," Diana said with a smile. "If there's nothing else, I'll go dancing," the young female assistant said shyly. Diana glanced at another man nearby, who was looking expectantly in her direction. She nodded immediately. "Go ahead." The young female assistant jumped up excitedly and walked towards the man. Watching the two figures, hand in hand, merge and walk away, Diana was in a trance. Then, a gentleman approached the table, politely bowed, and extended his hand. "Miss, may I invite you to dance?" Diana shook her head and said, "Sorry, I don't dance." The man retreated. Several more men approached, each offering a dance, but all were rejected. One man, despite being rejected, said, "It's okay if you don't know how to dance. I can teach you." Diana smiled faintly and watched him calmly. As if feeling immense pressure, cold sweat broke out on his forehead, and the man left in dismay. Outside the bar. "Are you sure you're an adult?" The security guard at the bar entrance looked at the dark-haired boy suspiciously. "Of course I'm over 20. The boy patted his chest assuredly. "Please go back, or show me your ID, the security guard said with a stern face. If he'd just come of age, he'd have been reluctant to believe him. But if he'd been told he was in his 20s and working as a security guard, was he a fool? The boy suddenly felt a headache. His online identity had naturally been altered by the AI Alice, but he still had no physical ID. If he'd known, he'd have brought his levitation cloak with him. The boy looked up at the bar's name and suddenly remembered something. He quickly asked, "How much is this bar?" "I'd better go back." Diana, wearing a white dress, thought to herself. "If I go back, I'll see him." With this thought, Diana stood up and said to her colleagues, "I have something to do at home, so I'll be going back now. Have the finance department record the expenses and I'll just have the company reimburse me." Diana left her table and chair, walked through the bar's spacious, crowded hall, and headed for the door. This attracted a few glances from the men, and earned her a resounding slap from her female companion. Diana made her way out. Just as she neared the bar's entrance, about to leave, a voice suddenly rang out from behind her, "Beautiful lady." Diana paused. Her beautiful face remained expressionless, but her thick black eyelashes fluttered, revealing something far less calm inside. Diana turned. Behind her, a young man in a suit and tie, resembling a little adult, crouched down, smiled at her, and held out his hand. "May I ask you for a dance?" Diana's beautiful eyes reflected the boy's smile and the hand that reached out to her. Usually composed, she took a breath before speaking. "Is one dance enough?" Nian blinked. "I don't think so. At least a date." Diana shook her head. Without hesitation, she placed her hand on the boy's and said, unequivocally, 1,000. She paused, then added, "You owe me this." Nian agreed. After all, this was a date that was 3 years late. Chapter 323 Living for You, The Reunited Extraordinary Family. Nian grasped the hand of a woman in a white dress, feeling as if he held on to the world and eternity. But before he could rise, he felt his right hand sink. Nian's body had already sunk into a warm, familiar embrace, a long-lost face cleanser. "I'm back. I told you, no matter where I go, I'll definitely come back." Nian held her hand tightly with his right hand, his left hand embracing her beautifully curved back, and spoke forcefully. At that moment, Nian recalled that last day 3 years ago, that night in the room. "No, this isn't right." Nian's eyes suddenly widened, his pale face tinged with panic as he turned away from the divine form before him. It wasn't because of any so-called taboo. Nian, a time traveler who had lived 2 lives as a human, and Wonder Woman, of divine blood, naturally didn't care what others or the outside world thought of them. But Poison Ivy's despairing, lifeless eyes flashed through Nian's mind. It's okay. Wonder Woman, her thick, jet black hair slightly disheveled, stepped forward and gently embraced Nian again. How can it be okay? Nian shook his head in agony. He was about to die. But he would live on, wearing a silver crown and ascending the throne of honor until the end of humanity. I had decided to do everything I could to protect your life and your honor, but I'm about to fail so soon, Nian said with difficulty, feeling powerless. A glimmer of light flashed in his dim eyes. But you're different. With your strength and potential, even if you're alone, you can. Nian hadn't finished his words. Tick. A drop of something warm landed on his face. Nian instinctively looked up, only to see her staring at him quietly. The woman's beautiful eyes sparkled with water, and tears flowed like pearls from a thread down her beautiful right cheek. Nian was suddenly overwhelmed. This was his first, and only, time. The woman he'd seen as the wisest, strongest, and most unbeatable woman in the world wept before him. Wonder Woman smiled faintly. Do you think I'll survive alone after you die? Her eyes gleamed with wisdom, resolute yet calm. I know you and the Ancient One told me to find a way to prevent me from committing suicide after your death. But you should know that if I wanted to die, no one could stop me. Nian's eyes were filled with pain. He opened his mouth, about to say something, but was kissed deeply by the woman. My life is already yours. I will live for you, I will fight for you, I will die for you, Wonder Woman Diana Prince said. When you get better, let's go on a date. You owe me this. Now. In a bar, in a dance hall. A dark-haired young man in a suit and a dark-haired woman in a white dress held hands. The young man held the woman's graceful, flawless waist, while the woman lovingly held his shoulders. Diana couldn't dance, and this was actually the truth, not just an excuse she had just used to refuse. Amazon only taught them how to fight. However, she was a quick learner. With her mastery of her body, she mastered this level of technique with just one look. Although Nian couldn't dance, he possessed spider sense, allowing him to quickly coordinate with Diana and imitate the movements of others. Halfway through the song, their skills had noticeably improved, suddenly surpassing most of the people around them. Their rapport was unmatched, and their movements became increasingly swift and fluid. Nian and Diana danced in the center of the bar, their eyes fixed on each other. Hey, isn't that Miss Diana? Also in the bar, a young female assistant dancing with her male partner stared at the two, one large and one small, with her eyes wide open in surprise. She couldn't help but wonder, so, in a previous life, it was a young man who had just come of age who saved the world. Meanwhile, in the shadows of the bar, a petite figure disguised as a bartender stood, her crimson hair held down by a hat, her pale red eyes fixed on the young man and the woman. She smiled knowingly, but then put her hand to her chest. The crimson girl stood alone for a long moment, then took a step back. Space shattered like a mirror, and her body vanished into a corner. Inside a villa outside Washington. Though it was late at night, the lights were bright, and there was a festive atmosphere. On the sofa in the main living room on the second floor, Nian held Diana's hand with one hand and the maid's with the other, allowing them to sit next to him. Just then, a small orange cat and a dark red cape each fell into the boy's arms, nuzzling at each other like a cat and a dog. Wow, you've finally grown up, you foodie. You're not eating for nothing, Nian smiled, looking down at the little emperor, who, though still tiny, had grown slightly larger. A glob of black liquid oozes from the cat's body, transforming into a dark tentacle that condenses into a ferocious head. It hums hoarsely. To be honest, I thought you were really dead. How could I bear to leave you? Nian said sincerely. You. Venom opened his mouth, but ultimately found himself at a loss for words. It hummed softly, turned its head away, and quickly sank into the cat's body. Nian's lips curled up. Looking at Diana, who showed no signs of aging, and the maid, who hadn't grown or changed at all, it seemed as if everything had remained frozen in time 3 years ago. But in reality, that wasn't the case. It was now 3 years later, 2015. His classmates were already in college. Technologies that were once merely concepts were now widely used in society. In this bizarre world, Technology had advanced rapidly over the past 3 years, and the times were changing rapidly. Many things had changed dramatically. Nian had to quickly adapt to 3 years of being offline and reconnect with the present world. It's a pity that Guanluo isn't here anymore, Wanda whispered. If Guanluo were included, the family lineup from 3 years ago would be complete. Trust him, it'll be fine. Nian patted Wanda's head, hugged Diana, Wanda, Xiao Wang, and the cloak, and promised firmly, from now on, our family will never be separated again. I promise. Late at night. When Nian arrived at the second-floor room, Diana, naturally still awake, sat on the bed in her long white dress, clearly waiting for him. 3 years had passed since their separation, both of them having shared a lifetime. The most important thing, of course, was why Nian hadn't completely died and had been resurrected. I think you saved me, Nian said after a moment's hesitation. Diana's beautiful eyes flickered with bewilderment. She had, of course, tried every method she could, but in the end, even she didn't know which one had worked. Chapter 324 The Third Permanent Ability, Divine Spirit. How should I put it? Nian couldn't help scratching his head, unsure where to begin. Finally, he stammered, on that last day 3 years ago, Diana was startled for a moment, then a memory struck her. Her beautiful face stiffened slightly, and she turned away from the room. That moment of dazed confusion was unlike anything Nian had ever seen. Then, an eerie silence fell over the room. 3 years ago, it hadn't seemed like a big deal, like it was a natural progression. Now, suddenly, 3 years later, it had surfaced, and neither Nian nor Diana knew how to process it. Silence lingered for nearly 3 minutes. Nian had thought his panic was naive, but he hadn't expected his aunt to be even more inept at handling this situation than he was. The thought of this made the young man's lips curl slightly, nearly laughing. What are you laughing at? Diana forced a cold expression, trying to look as serious as she had 3 years ago. However, after severing that relationship, it seemed impossible to regain her dignity as head of the family. Damn, how shameful. Nian was still chuckling. Diana glared at him and said, come up. Hit me gently. Knowing Diana was truly angry this time, Nian's temper immediately subsided. He drooped his ears, took off his slippers, and sat obediently on the bed. Diana's beautiful eyes glared at Nian, but she couldn't help but reach out and slap him, then hugged his head and laid him down. Nian felt his body flip, his vision upside down, and the back of his head rested on a soft, muscular surface. The first thing he saw was Diana's flawless face, as if created by a god. A long-missed demigod's lap pillow. There was a slight rustling sound from her hair against the fine fabric of her long dress. Don't move, Diana lowered her gaze to Nian, her white, ring-studded ring finger slightly raised, and tapped his forehead. Nian immediately settled down and stopped moving. In fact, this comfortable position, the pillow behind him, and the faint scent of violets were undoubtedly the perfect sleep aid. Nian could let his eyelids droop in peace, his whole body naturally relaxing. He lay flat, not wanting to move at all, his breathing becoming quiet and even. So, my earlier suspicion was correct. Diana's black hair, returning to its original white hue, fell over her shoulders, her beautiful eyes gleaming with star-like wisdom. What suspicion? Nian asked curiously, not opening his eyes. About your ability, the manifestation of the master of the familiar, Diana pondered. I used to think so, too. When you gained a permanent ability, you simply randomly extracted a small branch of the other person's ability and strengthened and perfected it. Later, I met with Gwen to discuss the details. You met with Gwen? When did that happen? Nian's eyes widened. Listen to me. Diana tapped him between the eyebrows. Okay. Nian shrugged and continued to lie flat. After chatting with Gwen, and considering your accident with poison ivy, I've come up with a small hypothesis. Diana analyzed softly. The hypothesis is that when two people wish each other well, they can bestow gifts upon each other and achieve good results. And the ability you gain will also come from the truest gift from their heart. Gwen's heartfelt wish was for you to pay more attention to her. You always treated Gwen as a playmate, accustomed to her presence, and therefore often neglected her. So, you received her spider sense. This way, you two not only have independent ways of communicating, but also feel a mutual sense of attraction when you're close. I understand. Nian opened his eyes, a flash of understanding in them. Because Gwen wanted him to pay more attention to her, he gained spider sense. Because Kara wanted her, originally an ordinary human, to be invulnerable and less vulnerable. So, he gained the Man of Steel. But during the accident with Poison Ivy, the two of them didn't wish each other well, and instead harbored hatred and resentment, which ultimately led to a disastrous outcome. So, you saved me. Xinian and Diana locked gazes, their eyes soft yet blazing. That day, the gods gave their all, their lives, their honor, even their very lives. Thanks to the most sincere wish and gift from Wonder Woman Diana Prince, ordinary humans, typically only 100 years old, achieved immortality. Divine immortality, the ability to live for millions of years, eternal youth. And due to the further refinement and evolution of Xinian's permanent abilities, his ultimate power was immortality. His third permanent ability, divine immortality. Divine immortality and its immense vitality prevented Xinian from perishing in the death mark. His body and soul were merely separated. This was the primary reason why Xinian, even without a soul, could survive for 3 years. Divine immortality's permanent ability didn't improve combat power, but theoretically, Xinian could live until the current universe's compression brought about its destruction. This was the eternity that the god ego had been pursuing for trillions of years, even after killing his wife and children. This is the gift of my kin, Xinian muttered to himself. It turns out that permanent abilities are the blessings and wishes left on him by those who love him, and therefore they will not fade with the passage of time. Since you're still alive, where did your soul go? Why did it take so long to return? Diana pinched the boy's face and whispered, if there wasn't a glimmer of life and hope in you, I want to come back too. For the past 3 years, I've thought about it every day I wake up, all the time. Nian said, holding Diana's hand. Then, Xinian recounted to Diana his 3-year journey of soul exile and wandering. My soul, due to the space gem I'm wearing, was transported to the soul gem's location. There, I encountered the human Red Skull, who had also been exiled and transported by the space gem decades earlier. However, I also used the soul gem to nourish my soul and erased some of the death mark. Later, I met my sister there. Thanks to my sister, I understood certain laws of death. Instead of unilaterally resisting it, I tried to assimilate and accept it, ultimately freeing myself from the curse and bondage of the death mark. After Xinian finished speaking, seeing Diana lost in thought, he cautiously asked, you're not jealous, are you? Boom. Diana slapped Xinian hard. Although it didn't hurt, Xinian pretended to be hurt. After all, he was used to it. I'm already grateful to her, so how could I be jealous? If I see her again, I will definitely. Before Diana could finish her words, Xinian quickly covered her mouth. Some things can't be said casually. Xinian blinked and said, if my judgment is correct, my sister's identity should be. The book introduction has a portal to the book club. If you can't see it, you can go back to the introduction of the book. Chapter 325 Two Deaths, Eternal Life? You mean, she's also, death? Inside the room, Diana's beautiful eyes were filled with surprise and solemnity. The fingers of her right hand gently scratched the head of the young man resting on her knees. Are there 2 deaths in this world? Xinian nodded, then shook his head. Of course. My sister is different from the woman we met on the Grand Air cruise ship who claimed to be death. That woman, according to her own words, she's the creator god of this universe, the truly powerful deity who controls the laws of death in the current world. As for my sister, according to my speculation and analysis, she's the embodiment of the concept of death. She is death itself. Xinian's eyes flickered, and he sighed softly. Not only does that person live in this universe, but they're also the only being that exists in other universes, even the multiverse. Therefore, my sister appears to be devoid of her own emotions, anger, sorrow, or selfish desires, treating all beings equally. Only when a creature in the current universe or the multiverse is about to die will there be a very low chance of catching a glimpse of her form. Therefore, Xinian vaguely knew that the invitation to become his official assistant held a profound allure for the current universe and even the multiverse. Perhaps it was his own death mark, his divine immortality, or even his other abilities that had caught the other's attention. This was why Xinian had followed him for 3 years as an unofficial death assistant. If the sky god Ego and the creator god Death knew of this, they would be shocked and incredulous. After all, death itself is not driven by emotion. Are you thinking about her? Diana asked softly, not angry. She brushed the boy's bangs aside. Xinian nodded and replied sincerely, I don't know if I'll ever see her again. I didn't even properly thank her the last time. Without his sister's guidance, how could he have skillfully deciphered the Creator God's death mark? But seeing her again would be extremely difficult. After all, she wasn't always in the current world, and the only chance of seeing her was at the very end of his life. And barring any mishap, he would live forever, until the end of this universe. Eternal life and death, like day and night, would never again intersect. Diana suddenly smiled softly and soothed. Don't you have something she left behind? What? Nian looked at his aunt in confusion. Knowledge and understanding, and the feeling of witnessing death 1,000 times, aren't they all in your memory? Diana said, gently touching his brow with a finger. Nian clutched his forehead, lost in thought, then smiled in relief. That's true. Even if they could never meet again, the coldness and warmth, the solemnity and liveliness, the sadness and smile, that uniquely belonged to death, would never be erased from my heart. After listening to the complete story of Nian's soul over the past 3 years, Diana pondered for a moment and said, I've always felt that dissolving the death mark from your soul wouldn't be so simple. I feel the same way. Nian gently stroked his forehead and chest. Ever since the death mark had merged with his soul, he'd been experiencing a strange feeling. This feeling wasn't the same discomfort and foreboding it once felt. However, even now, after his soul had returned to his body and been revived, there had been no specific signs of anything unusual. Take off your clothes, Diana suddenly said. Huh? Nian's eyes widened as he sat up in bed, his gaze unconsciously fixed on the tall, perfectly formed figure wrapped in a stylish white dress. With a negotiating tone, he offered concession. Auntie, how about this time? What are you thinking? Diana spat, flicking his forehead with her index finger. I need to check your body to see if there's anything wrong. Okay. Clearly disappointed, Nian began to remove his clothes. Diana's gaze was calm as her white hair danced gracefully. A silver protective bracelet emerged from her left wrist, igniting a gentle, yet not scorching, divine flame. Her other hand grasped the air, grasping a rope that shimmered from intangible to tangible, a golden sheen. Since that night, not only had Diana's hair turned white, as if her divine blood had returned to its ancestral form, but the divine power within her had nearly doubled, and her control over it had reached a far higher level than before. Leopard Barber had experienced this firsthand. So now, Diana overflowed with might and divine power, her perfect body practically coated in a white glow, unmistakably a true divine being. Although Nian knew that the lasso of truth artifact could help his aunt reach the realm of the soul, seeing Diana, like a goddess wielding a golden whip, Nian couldn't help but swallow, wincing. And, please be gentle. A night passed. The next morning, Wanda had prepared a hearty breakfast early, fresh milk, omelets, bacon, steak and pasta, breaded and roasted chicken, and everything in between. The table was so overflowing with food that Nian thought it was lunch, the kind of feast he'd get when guests arrived. Perhaps thinking he'd last eaten in 3 years, he was afraid he'd starved. Under the expectant gaze of his maid, Nian forced himself to eat everything. It had to be said. Over the past 3 years, despite Wanda's lack of physical development and her petite figure, her cooking skills had improved dramatically, rivaling even the most skilled 5-star chefs. Nian looked at the woman sitting at the table next to him, dressed in a smart, fashionable white shirt and black skirt. Her figure, drawn from her tied-up black hair to her waist and hips, formed a perfect curve. Nian couldn't help but ask curiously, Auntie, don't you have to go to work today? It was already 9 in the morning. Last night's checkup lasted me a long time before I went to bed. Diana replied, It's been almost 10 years. It's time to change my job at the law firm and my current identity. In the 100 years since she arrived in the human world, Diana has changed identities more than 3 times. Otherwise, her eternal youth would sooner or later draw suspicion from the humans around her. That's right, Nian suddenly realized. It wasn't just his aunt who needed a change, his own identity too. After all, his previous identity had been missing for 3 whole years, and now he still had the same look and figure. Wanda, how about you? Are you still in school? Nian glanced at the petite yet mature and steady crimson maid standing steadily beside him. Wanda shook her head gently, a smile spreading across her childish face. She said softly, I haven't been to school since I graduated from junior high 6 months ago. I haven't been to Gotham City or Kamartaj as often. Butler Alfu and Teacher Ancient One said there was nothing more they could teach me, so I've been staying home to take care of you, young master, and I've been learning a wide range of knowledge from Alice. Nothing more to teach? Nian blinked his eyes. It seemed that during the 3 years that he had been lying down, he had cultivated an incredible monster maid. End of this chapter. Thank you so much for reading until the end. Don't forget to give it a like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription or donation encourages us to continue. Thank you all. See you in the next video.